Chapter 1138. Dustless opened the door to the modern world and stepped into it. Just as he was about to leave Hueco Mundo, he felt a gust of wind behind him, followed by a sharp pain in his heart. Pucci. The ice-cold, long saber minced Dustless's internal organs, ending his life in an instant. He turned his head around and saw Shinozaki Ishin in perfect condition. "You bastard! You should be dead already." Dustless clenched his teeth and stared at Shinozaki Ishin with bloodshot eyes. "And this is—" He opened his eyes wide and looked at the katana in his chest. It was obviously not the katana that belonged to Voids. It was a Zanpakuto from head to toe. "Impossible! You should have lost the power of the Shinigami. How can you still have a Zanpakuto?" Dustless exclaimed. His tone had lost its usual calmness. "Hee. God's plan is better than man's. I did lose the power of the Shinigami to escape from you, but I also regained another power." Shinozaki Ishin smiled and said, "I did lose all my power at that time, but because of the Void, I regained my power. The power of the Shinigami and the Void have both returned." "The Void?" Hearing this, Wu Chen's face sank. His eyes flickered as he said, "You mean the Void created by Aizen Muzu? The one created with the soul of the Shinigami as the foundation?" So was Void White. Dustless understood how Shinozaki Ishin regained the power of the Shinigami. Because Void White was able to use the power of the Shinigami, Shinozaki Ishin, who fused with Void White, naturally obtained the power of the Shinigami and the Shinigami. "I underestimated you. You purposely hid the power of the Shinigami just to bait me?" Dustless suddenly understood Shinozaki Ishin's intention. He cursed himself for being careless. "That's right." Shinozaki Ishin nodded and said, "I fought with you before, so I know how scary you are. That's why I had to find another way to deal with you." "So you were faking everything just now?" Dustless asked in a hoarse voice. "There's nothing I can do about it. The reason is that you're too terrifying." Shinozaki Ishin sneered, and the spiritual pressure that belonged to the Grim Reaper in his body surged again. "Thanks to you, I've obtained the power of the Grim Reaper and the Void, which is commonly known as the Mask. I've also been fortunate enough to obtain the ability of enhanced regeneration. I underestimated you." Lowering his head, Wu Chan confessed to this without hiding anything. "Of course, don't think that you can kill a former captain so easily." Shinozaki Ishin's spiritual pressure rose rapidly, and his entire body was filled with a scorching aura. He roared, "Don't think that this is the end." Buzz, buzz, buzz. As soon as Shinozaki Ishin finished speaking, the ground began to tremble, and a giant blade-shaped flame appeared on the ground. 96 of the Tao of Destruction, one blade cremation. The gigantic blade-shaped flame pulverized the soft sand. An unprecedentedly gigantic blade of light instantly rose from the ground. Sensing the terrifying temperature that could even melt the sky, Shinozaki decisively pulled out his blade and retreated. Boom, boom, boom. The flaming blade exploded, evaporating the remaining spiritual droplets in the air. An incomparably thick pillar of fire rose from the ground into the air. It was a shocking distance of a few hundred meters. This should be the end. Seeing this, Shinozaki Ishin heaved a sigh of relief. Sensing the disappearance of Dustless's spiritual pressure, he smiled in relief. His long-cherished wish of many years had been fulfilled. The shackles that bound his body also disappeared, and his body felt exceptionally light. What is that?" A blinding golden light suddenly swept across the sky, so bright that Shinozaki Ishin could not open his eyes. Within the flames, a gigantic figure appeared. The golden figure was as majestic as a mountain peak, reaching straight into the clouds. It was covered in heavy armor that looked ancient. The two golden katanas on its waist were dozens of meters long, and it sent chills down one's spine. Especially the ferocious Tengu armor, it made one shudder in fear. What the hell is this?" Shinozaki Ishin muttered to himself in disbelief. He tensed up, and he could acutely sense a murderous aura locking onto him. The boiling murderous aura made him feel as if he had fallen into hell. "It is impressive that you are so smart." A cold and magnetic voice came from the top of the monster's head. Shinozaki raised his head and looked over. What he saw was dustless. His expression was cold, and his shining eyes were filled with admiration. He seemed to admire Shinozaki Ishin's intelligence. It was not easy to achieve this. How is this possible? I should have crushed his internal organs. How is he still alive? And he is completely fine. Shinozaki Ishin's face was extremely pale, and his hands that were holding the Zanpakuto were trembling. Clang! A loud explosion attracted Ishin's attention. Kinsusinu, perfect form, pulled out the blade of his katana, and a golden light swept out from the tip of the katana. Shoo shoo shoo. The chilling wind from the katana killed Shinozaki Ishin, and it covered the sky and shattered the earth. A crack that was dozens of kilometers long appeared on the land of Hueco Mundo. Shinozaki Ishin was chopped into pieces, and there was nothing left of him. Why aren't you using super regeneration now? Idiot! Dispelling Kinsusinu, Dustless sneered. The chilling wind from the katana still had some characteristics, and it was impossible for Shinozaki Ishin to continue creating something out of nothing. Crack, crack. Dustless opened his mouth again, and just as he was about to leave, the sky distorted, and an unexpected figure appeared. "It's you, what's the matter?" Dustless asked coldly, and his face was filled with confusion. After living in the modern world for a few years, he had a lot of interactions with the person in front of him, and they were in a relationship where they used each other. Chapter 1139. This person was Dustless's future ally, Urahara Kisuk. "It's you." Urahara Kisuk looked at Wuchen with doubt in his surprised tone. He immediately looked at the exaggerated crack on the ground, and his eyes almost fell out of their sockets. Who did this? Urahara Kisuk was like being struck by lightning. His mind was in chaos. The crack in the ground that was attacked by Kinsusinu seemed to split the entire Hueco Mundo into two. It was extremely shocking. It was the first time in Urahara Kisuk's life to see such a dreamy scene. Looking at the torn Hueco Mundo below, it was as terrifying as a natural disaster. Dustless said calmly, "I happened to encounter a Vasto lore before, so I killed him." Hearing this, Urahara Kisuk's expression suddenly froze. What did he mean by killing him? He couldn't help but feel sorry for Vasto Lord who was just killed by Dustless. It gave people the feeling that he had casually killed Jillian. "What's the matter?" Seeing Urahara Kisuk motionless, Dustless asked, "If there's nothing else, I'll go first." Urahara Kisuk couldn't help but look up at Dustless, licked his dry tongue, looked at his back and asked, "Are we still allies in the same boat?" "Of course." Dustless replied directly without thinking. "Now, and in the future, we only have one enemy at present. Aizen Sosuke." Waving his hand to open Hueco Mundo, Dustless stepped into it and merged with the darkness. And the broken black space began to heal. In the cold and desolate void, only Urahara Kisuk was left alone, silent. Ka. After a while, a dazzling white light swept past Urahara Kisuk, showing the outline of a crossing gate, and then a wheat-colored young woman stepped out of it. Her figure was curvaceous and very hot. "Miss Yaichi." Urahara Kisuk was stunned for a moment before he said, "Is the group of people from the Masked Legion okay?" Fortunately, they escaped quickly in the last battle of Soul Society. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster. "His condition is not bad." Saifang's courtyardy nodded and gave Urahara Kisuk a comforting look, indicating that he didn't need to worry. Immediately, his face inevitably became gloomy, and his wrinkled little face lost its former brilliance. He looked very decadent and worried. But then again, is it really reliable to cooperate with that guy? Why do I feel like they're colluding with each other? Dustless's back appeared in his mind. Those deep eyes could devour people's minds, making it impossible for people to understand what he was thinking. To be honest, I have the same feeling. Urahara Kisuk shrugged and sighed heavily. Not only are they colluding with each other, they are clearly leading the wolf into the house. If we don't control it well, will be swallowed alive sooner or later. After hearing his question, Urahara Kasuk said, "But even if we're walking on a tightrope on the cliff, we can only brace ourselves. If we go against that guy, we'll be annihilated in an instant." After that, Urahara Kasuk looked down at the Hueco Mundo destroyed by Consisinu perfect form and didn't speak for a long time. "We can only take one step at a time. I hope we're right." Saifang's courtyard, Yu was also very melancholy. They wanted to resist Dustless, but their confidence was shattered by the tens of kilometers long crack on the ground. If they resist Aizen Sosuke, even if they're not his opponent, they still have a way to retreat. But if they resist Dustless, they'll be annihilated on the spot. They have no choice but to follow Dustless to the end. But at least we're safe for the time being. As that guy said, our current enemy is the same, and that's Aizen Sosuke. After a while, Urahara Kasuk breathed a sigh of relief. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. This is also a blessing in disguise. Looks like it's done. In the modern world, Dustless wandered around the vicinity of Shinozaki Ichigo's house, searching for traces of the Great Void. The spiritual pressure of Jillian that he released previously had already disappeared with the wind, and there was still a lot of dust on the ground. Ah, how cruel. He actually cut Jillian into 8 pieces. Dustless's sharp eyes immediately understood that this was Kurosaki Ichigo's doing. His gaze fell on the head of the boy in the rain. The rain from the sky drenched Kurosaki Ichigo's clothes. At this moment, he was expressionless, and the whole world was looking at him coldly. He was very disappointed. Shinozaki Ichigo was wearing the Death Tyrant suit and stood alone in the world of rain. There were still bloodstains on his Zanpakuto. Seeing this, Dustless's cold heart remained unmoved. Perhaps he had become immune after doing so many bad things, and human emotions were gradually drifting away from him. Next, it's your turn, Rukia. Taking a deep look at Rukia, who fainted due to excessive fatigue, Dustless turned around and left. The next step is to continue to persuade Aizen Sosuke to send people to capture Rukia, and then take the opportunity to lure Shinozaki Ichigo into Soul Society. Returning to the villa he robbed, Dustless first took a bath, then went to bed and slept. Soon, he would take the opportunity to sneak into Soul Society and take advantage of the chaos caused by Kurosaki Ichigo's invasion of Soul Society. He would use the star badge he stole from Jugram to sneak into the first team and steal the Bankai of the captain. Chapter 1140. Soul Society's Central Room 46. This was where Sosuke Aizen frequented. He used a special channel to monitor the place he wanted to monitor. Phew, looks like it's finally done. On the LCD screen, Sosuke Aizen looked at Shinozaki Ichigo with a satisfied smile. It's not done yet. The surface of the Hogyoku flashed with light, and Dustless disguised as its consciousness continued. We still need to lure that idiot Shinozaki Ichigo to Soul Society. That's right. Sosuke Aizen nodded, then touched his eyes and whispered, "Leave this to Kachiki Byakuya. If he knows that Rukia passed the power of Shinigami to Shinozaki Ichigo, he will be furious. Yes, he is the kind of person who cares about his reputation. He will be eager to capture Rukia, but there is no need to expose the news in advance. At least let Shinozaki Ichigo get used to the power of Shinigami." Dustless disguised as Hogyoku's consciousness said. Makes sense. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. In the dark central room, 46. Everyone, Kachiki Byakuya, looked around at the sages with no expression. Perhaps because they were all nobles, there was a rare touch of vitality in his tone. He asked in confusion, "Why did you call me here? What is it?" Rukia lent the power of Shinigami to a mere human. As the patriarch of the Kachiki family, you should give us an explanation, a sage said sternly. This is a big problem. Another sage also chimed in. She must be arrested immediately and sentenced to death. That's right, that kind of person is a disgrace to Soul Society. A large group of sages began to attack Rukia. Their voices were as harsh as flies, and it echoed in Kachiki Byakuya's ears for a long time. Does anyone have any evidence? Shimubaya asked calmly as a strange glint flashed across his eyes. Of course. On the huge, square crystal screen, the scene of Rukia inserting the Zanpakuto into Shinozaki Ichigo's body flashed, and all the power of Shinigami was transferred. Kurosaki Ichigo also transformed and carried a huge Zanpakuto. No problem. I will go and capture him. I will definitely give everyone an explanation. The dignity of Soul Society will not be trampled on by a human. Shimubaya said coldly, his tone decisive, his cold eyes devoid of any human emotions. Goodbye. As soon as he finished speaking, Shimubaya also disappeared without a trace and retreated outside of Central Room 46. Without a doubt, Central Room 46 was wiped out many years ago. Naturally, it was Sosuke Aizen who secretly controlled it. This self-righteous idiot. Outside Central Room 46, Dustless quietly stared at Kumu by his back. He despised him in his heart before heading to the first squad's quarters. After being a captain for a while, Dustless was quite familiar with Soul Society's location. A few minutes later, he arrived at the first team's quarters. Defense seems to be very lazy. Have you all forgotten the painful lessons that Soul Society suffered in the past? Observation hockey vaguely swept through everyone. The members of the first team looked very lazy. All of them were listless, glancing at everyone. Dustless stepped into the team house of the first team. His body turned into a gust of wind. These people with low strength simply thought that a gust of wind swept past. Who was it stop? The thunderous roar went into Wu Chen's ears, which made him temporarily lose his sense of hearing. His ears were buzzing. Who are you? You dare to break into the first squad? You have guts. About 10 feet ahead, a white-haired Shinigami in black blocked Dustless's path. Looking closely, this person was the deputy captain of the first squad, the Shinigami who had accompanied Yamamoto for thousands of years. Head Sparrow Jiro. Who is this guy? I seem to have seen him before. Head Sparrow Jiro muttered in his heart while pulling out his Zanpakuto. Dustless was wearing a silver mask, so he couldn't distinguish his appearance, but he always felt that the outline of his figure was familiar. At the same time, the Shinigami around also heard the news and surrounded Dustless. A large group of people came to die. Red light shot out of his eyes, and the people who were swept by were creepy. Dustless's eyes stared, and a sharp wave of deterrence broke out of his body. The Shinigami who were affected all fell to the ground, foaming at the mouth, losing consciousness, and were stunned by Haushika Haki. What the hell is this trick? He killed so many Shinigami without moving. Looking around, Head Sparrow Jiro was surprised to find that he was the only one left. The other Shinigami were killed in an instant, and he was the most conspicuous among them. Worthy of being the Shinigami who has followed the head captain for thousands of years. Seeing that Head Sparrow Jiro was not put down, Dustless gave him a look of admiration and immediately rushed to Head Sparrow Jiro's side in an instant. Pucci. Even if he realized Dustless's attack for the first time, Head Sparrow Jiro pulled out his sword to resist, and a fatal wound appeared on his chest, and he was instantly killed. Your reaction is good, but your speed is still too slow. Glancing at Head Sparrow Jiro indifferently, Dustless stepped over his body. Chapter 1141. Even though Jiro was a vice captain, he had followed Yamamoto for nearly 1,000 years, and he was also a rare genius. It took him only 30 days to learn the Bankai, which showed his extraordinary talent. But these were all just fancy for Dustless. The difference between them was too big. Huh, you didn't die. You're really tenacious. In fact, you can avoid the disaster by lying down quietly. Suddenly feeling that his right foot was caught, Dustless turned his head and happened to see Jiro, who looked pale but refused to give up. Even though his chest was bleeding and his ribs and heart were exposed to the air, he still refused to let Dustless go. This courage was worthy of respect. Since you want to die so much, I will fulfill your wish. The golden broadsword was raised again, and when he was about to cut down, looking at Jiro's determined expression, Dustless suddenly put down his hands. Of course, it was not because he was influenced by Jiro. TSK, Vice Captain of Sparrow Tribe, I want to thank you. Because of you, I suddenly thought a good idea. His eyeballs were rolling, glowing with bright colors. What are you going to do? Being stared at by Dustless's shining eyes, Jiro was also a man who had lived for thousands of years. Seeing Dustless's cunning eyes, he smelled a strong sense of crisis. Suddenly, he felt that it would be better if he died. What am I going to do? You will know soon. Regardless of how Jiro struggled, Dustless picked him up and went straight to the team house that was usually used for the captain's meeting. Strange, why is my right eye twitching recently? Looking at the picturesque scenery of Soul Society in the distance, Yamamoto frowned slightly. His body, which was leaning on a crutch, looked particularly old under the sunset. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A burst of wind came at a fast speed. Yamamoto's puzzled expression suddenly disappeared, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. How dare you break into the first team? Who are you? Yamamoto said sternly. Combined with the scars all over his head, he was extremely imposing. Sparrow Tribe. Staring at the figure in the mysterious man's right arm, Head Captain Yamamoto's eyes almost popped out of his sockets. He almost roared, "Put down the person in your hand before you completely anger me." The veins on Yamamoto's forehead bulged as he shouted in a low voice, trying his best to conceal the flames in his heart that could burn the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The blazing flames roared, and the temperature of the entire 1st Division's quarters rose by several hundred times. However, they did not dare to approach Dustless, or rather, they did not dare to approach Minister Jiro. The flowing fire edge didn't differentiate between friend and foe. Yamamoto is already old. I'm afraid that when he suppressed me, he might not have been able to exert the full power of Ryujin Jaka. If it were me, with my attainments, I would definitely not be worse than him. Dustless's heart almost jumped out of his chest as he looked at Liu Jinjiho with fiery eyes. He looked forward to seeing Liu Jinjihuo. With Liu Jinjihuo, his combat power would definitely increase exponentially. Apart from Spirit King, Yamamoto's Liu Jinjiho was the only thing that could make Dustless interested. The Star Badge of Annihilation, it seems that only when the Death God uses Bankai can it be taken away. Head Captain Yamamoto will definitely not use Bankai so easily. The temperature of Zenka no Tachi will slowly evaporate the water in Soul Society until Soul Society collapses. Dustless frowned as he thought in his heart. That's right. A cunning glint flashed across Wu Chen's eyes. The masked Wu Chen sneered and said, "Immediately release Wu Chen, who was suppressed more than 10 years ago. Otherwise, I will kill Chief K. Jiro right now." This sentence made Minister Jiro's blood come back to life, and he hurriedly said to the head captain, "Head captain, you must not let that big devil go. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. He alone can fight against the entire Death God." Except for Urahara, Kisuk, and E. Everyone in Soul Society still thought that Dustless was still imprisoned in Avicii Hell. Impossible. Without even thinking about it, Head Captain Yamamoto directly rejected this absurd proposal. Soul Society spent a lot of effort to capture him. Don't even think about letting him go. Is that so? Hearing this, Dustless smiled indifferently. "I will only give you 30 seconds. If you don't let him go, the head of the Vice Captain of Sparrow will be removed." After that, Dustless indifferently raised his Zanpakuto and placed it on Minister Jiro's head. This old man will definitely not compromise, so he will only save Jiro at all costs. At such a short distance, I have to kill him in one blow. Otherwise, Jiro will be the one to die. This old man will most likely be forced to perform decapitation. Only in this way can he kill me with one blow. Dustless sneered in his heart and slowly took out the star badge that belonged to Quincy. Once Head Captain Yamamoto dared to use Bankai, he will take the opportunity to seize Ryujin Jaka. Sparrow Tribe has followed me for thousands of years. I must not watch him fall indifferently. Head Captain Yamamoto was also struggling in his heart, and his hands holding his Zanpakuto were sweating. After a while, Dustless raised his Zanpakuto and pointed it at Minister Jiro's head and said indifferently, 30 seconds is up. Since you don't agree, then he will die. Wait, the head captain suddenly said, I agree to your conditions. I am willing to release Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but stagnate and said in a daze, he actually agreed? Taking advantage of Dustless's sluggish state, a fiery red shadow instantly swept in front of him, and a blazing flame rushed towards him. This cunning old man. Seeing this, Dustless's pupils suddenly shrank and immediately understood that this was Old Man Yamamoto's stalling tactic, waiting for him to reveal a flaw and choose to attack. Bankai Remnant Flame Tachi. Chapter 1142. The affairs of the world were unpredictable. Wu Chun never expected that the head captain would play this kind of trick. His face changed greatly, and he hurriedly took out the star badge in his hand. However, the sharp edge of Zanka no Tachi mercilessly cut through Wu Chun's body. The star badge in his hand strangely fell to the ground after a fiery red halo. Zanka no Tachi East, Rising Sunblade. The wind of the burning sword cut through Dustless's body, and his whole body directly evaporated. The huge person disappeared into thin air. It was not that Dustless used some kind of ninjutsu to hide, but that the temperature of Zanka no Tachi was too hot. Clang! The white star badge fell to the ground, making a crisp sound. It was different from before, now it was dark red. What is that thing? Looking at the mysterious star badge, Yamamoto frowned and was surprised to find that the aura of the star badge was very similar to his Ryujin Jaka. Head captain, it's my fault that I was caught by that guy. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in danger. Jiro's face was full of shame. He didn't dare to look at Yamamoto. Get up, Sparrow Tribe. Hearing this, Yamamoto helped him up and said, the guy with the mask is very strong and despicable. It's normal that you can't beat him. The vice captain of the Sparrow Tribe can't beat me. Do you think you can beat me? You are too ignorant and naive, Yamamoto. Dustless, who was killed, once again appeared out of thin air and looked at the red star badge on the ground. He quickly picked it up and was very excited. Is there something wrong with this guy's head? What's there to be happy about with a broken badge? Jiro muttered in confusion, thinking that Wu Chun had been beaten silly by Yamamoto. Humph! Without the Sparrow Tribe, you can't threaten this old man. I will kill you again, Yamamoto said confidently. His tone was very calm. In front of his Zanka no Tachi, all the enemies were very fragile. No one could ignore the nightmare of Zanka no Tachi. Really? Dustless's face was full of ridicule. He immediately hooked his thumb at Yamamoto and said provocatively, if that's the case, then come over. If you can kill me, you can try. After saying that, Dustless raised his arms and stopped moving. You're courting death. Captain Yamamoto's sunken eyes suddenly bulged, and his murderous intent surged as he swung his Zanpakuto again. Zankatachi, East, Rising Sunblade. Mobilizing all the Ryatsu in his body, Yamamoto swung his Zanpakuto. He thought that Dustless would be crushed on the spot, but Zanpakuto didn't react at all. How is this possible? Zanka no Tachi is useless? Looking at the Zanpakuto in his hand in disbelief, Yamamoto was dumbfounded for a while. His turbid pupils dilated several times, and his mind was in chaos. Could it be? His eyes narrowed as he stared at the strange star badge in Dustless's hand. Zanka no Tachi didn't listen to him, but the star badge in Dustless's hand was still shining. It was very similar to the aura of Zanka no Tachi, as if it was sealed in it. This was definitely not as simple as a coincidence. You killed me once just now, so I'll accept Zanka no Tachi as a gift. As for your lives, TSK, an old man who has lost his Bankai, I really can't bring myself to kill him. Hearing Wu Chen's words, Yamamoto and Jiro felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave, especially Yamamoto, who asked with a pale face, You took away my Bankai? You're the one who took it away? That's absolutely impossible. Really? It seems that you don't believe it. That's good. I also want to test the power of Zenka no Tachi. Hearing this, Dustless's face flashed a strange smile, and then under the surprised gaze of Yamamoto, Ryatsu erupted from his body as hot as Yamamoto's. All things in the world turned to ashes. Ryujin Jaka. After the release of Zanpakuto, Dustless's body immediately erupted with a large number of flames, and the team behind him was suddenly burned to ashes. The terrifying high temperature turned everything into ashes, just like his liberation language. You bastard, seeing this. Yamamoto's old face turned green, and suddenly a flash of light flashed in his mind. Remembering Dustless's strange behavior before, his face was pale as he said, "You deliberately asked me to release Captain Dustless, who was imprisoned in the past. In fact, you want to force me to release Bankai? It seems that you are not confused. That is indeed the case." Under the mask, Wu Chun was immensely proud. Now that he had obtained Ryujin Jaka, his mood was unusually happy. It was rare for him to explain, "I know you won't choose to release the imprisoned captain, and I also know you won't give up on Minister Jiro, so you will only choose to attack me. All of this is actually within my expectations, but it's a pity that you think you have one. Ridiculous. I'm sorry to disturb you. Head captain, goodbye." After saying that, Dustless disappeared from the first team's building. "Listen to Yamamoto. No matter what, you must not let other captains know that the ability of Zanpakuto was taken away from me," Yamamoto warned cautiously. "The biggest deterrent of a head captain is strength, or Zenka no Tachi. Without Zanpakuto, the consequences will be unimaginable, and Soul Society will inevitably fall into unprecedented turmoil." Chapter 1143. After leaving the 1st Division, Dustless went straight to the 4th Division. He was running and flying all the way with a happy heart. After taking away Yamamoto's Ryujin Jaka, Dustless recalled the head captain's face that was as red as a pig's liver. That complacent old man always uses flowing fire edge to show off his muscles. Let's see what you can do in the future. Wu Chun gloated and said to himself with a smile in his eyes. Seeing the pain of losing Yamamoto's Zanpakuto, Dustless was very happy. An old man who has lived for thousands of years should have retired a long time ago. It's time for someone else to take over the position of head captain. Dustless's eyes glowed as he sped up. The 4th Division's building was right in front of him. When he got close, he withdrew all his spiritual pressure. After all, he was still a prisoner of Soul Society. If he walked around openly, he would definitely attract endless trouble. It wasn't his first time coming to the 4th Division. When Dustless was still the 4th Division's vice captain, he could see the entire 4th Division with his eyes closed. In a few seconds, he arrived at Unohana's captain's office. TSK. So serious. Inside Unohana's captain's office, she was currently reading through many documents with a serene expression. Her expression was extremely serious and even meticulous. It was the complete opposite of her usual gentle self. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A shadow flashed through the air as Dustless entered through the window. While Unohana was still in a daze, he hugged her tightly from behind. "It's you?" Unohana turned her head in surprise as her eyes widened. Unohana grumbled, "You left for a few years without any news. I heard that you have a few lovers in the modern realm. They're living a carefree life." Hearing this, Dustless's expression turned awkward. Unohana's words made his stomach churn. He immediately promised, "Ray, my heart is comparable to the sun and the moon. My feelings for you will never change." Women were meant to be coaxed. Although this kind of promise was very common, its effect was astonishing. Even if they knew that it was a lie, they would still be in a good mood. "Sweet talker." Unowa rolled her eyes and asked straightforwardly, "Coming to Soul Society for no reason. What kind of chore do you want me to do? Why would I give you such a hard job? I'm not a jinx." Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry, feeling deeply speechless, and then said bluntly, "Soul Society is about to face a great change, and the Soul Society that has been silent for thousands of years will be completely reshuffled." Unohana Retsu frowned and asked, You're saying that Sosuke Aizen has already made his move? Speaking of which, Room 46 recently ordered Kimu Hakwiming to capture Rukia. I presume the mastermind behind the scenes is Aizen Sosuke. I was the one who instigated Sosuke Aizen to do this. Dustless admitted frankly, his tone free and easy. Uno Wallai was stunned and asked in surprise, Rukia is your subordinate. Are you going to attack her? Of course not. When I was the captain of the 7th Division, Rukia was one of the only 3 members I had. She didn't have any direct conflict with me, so the reason I instigated Sosuke Aizen to capture her was to lure Shinozaki Ichigo to take the bait. Shinozaki Ichigo cares a lot about restraints, so once he hears that Rukia is about to be executed, he will definitely rush to Soul Society without stopping. Dustless quickly explained. This was a plan he had thought of many years ago. However, after Sosuke Aizen betrays Soul Society, there will be one person who will definitely die. Dustless spat out a bone-chilling breath, his eyes filled with killing intent. Definitely die? Hearing the thick killing intent in Dustless's words, Uno Hanaretsu's eyes flashed as she guessed. The person you're talking about, isn't it the head captain? You're smart, it's indeed him. Dustless's eyes burned with flames, not bothering to hide his growing ambition. That old man is too stubborn, so I can only take advantage of the chaos to kill him. But it's not my turn to do it. I'll just borrow a knife to kill him. Borrow a knife to kill him? Hearing this, Uno Hanaretsu thought of the head captain's strength and couldn't help but ask curiously, just whose knife? Soul Society doesn't have a direct confrontation with the head captain. Doesn't exist? That was in the past, but times have changed. That old man is already nearing the end of his days. Dustless chuckled in high spirits. Taking out the Crimson Flame Star badge, the scorching temperature immediately attracted Uno Hanaretsu's attention. Could this be Ryujin Jaka? Swallowing her breath with difficulty, Uno Hanaretsu muttered in shock. After confirming it carefully, it can't be wrong. This is definitely Ryujin Jaka. How did it end up in your hands? Uno Hanaretsu's eyes locked onto Dustless as if she had seen a ghost, unable to shift her gaze away. Do you really want to know? Dustless looked at Uno Hanaretsu's face full of hope, as if she wanted to know, and said with an evil grin, If I remember correctly, Yong-in and the others have all gone for a routine checkup. Do you think we should take advantage of this rare opportunity to do something meaningful? Something meaningful? Uno Hanaretsu clearly did not understand what he meant. Her nose wrinkled, and just as she was about to ask, she saw the evil grin on Dustless's face and immediately understood what he meant. This is the captain's office. Uno Hanaretsu pouted unhappily, her face turning red. That's true. It is indeed a little inappropriate. How about I go to the bushes outside the window? There are fewer people there, and the environment is more elegant. No one will disturb me, and the most important thing is the ventilation. Dustless said with an evil grin. Seeing this, Uno Hanaretsu gave up and could only whisper into Dustless's ear, Hurry up, Yong-in and the others will be back in an hour. Dustless was overjoyed and pounced on Uno Hanaretsu, skillfully undressing her. What followed was a long and drawn-out hand-to-hand battle. Chapter 1144. On the bed, Uno Hanalai was sweating profusely. Her eyes were blank and empty, as if her soul had been sucked away. Her limbs were weak, and it was difficult for her to even move. Her entire body was soft and sluggish. Turning her head with great difficulty, Uno Hua looked at Dustless, who was enjoying his tea on the sofa. She couldn't help but scold. You said half an hour before. Now that you've messed around, you've increased the time by 5 to 6 times. Uno Hanalai forced herself to stand up, but intense pain came from her lower body. She had no choice but to lie down again. Smelling the rotting smell in the air, she felt awkward and gloomy. Her face was so red that it was burning. I couldn't help it. You know how difficult it is for the beast in your heart to settle things. Dustless shrugged as if it had nothing to do with him. He then flattered. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself. How could you let go of such a great opportunity? Earlier, Toru and Young In had come, but they were blocked by Dustless's enchantment. After shamelessly doing it for a few hours, Dustless finally stopped. Unohanalai was also in this state. What do you plan to do after killing the captain? Team Zero will definitely appear again, and it will be a lot of trouble. Unohanalai sighed heavily. Soul Society was plagued with disasters, but at the same time, she didn't doubt Dustless's idea. Why did Soul Society have to face so many disasters? To put it bluntly, it was because they didn't have enough strength. If they had Dustless's strength, they would be able to fight against all the Shinigami. Soul Society would naturally be peaceful if they didn't. Don't worry, I'm just borrowing someone else's knife to kill them. I'll use Sosuke Aizen to kill the captain, and in the end, they won't suspect me. When the time comes, I'll return to the abyss to show my loyalty. Dustless said mysteriously. Return to the abyss. After thinking for a while, Uno still could not understand Dustless's intentions, so she asked, "It's a good thing that you were able to come out. If you were to walk right into the trap again, it would take a lot more effort to get out. Don't worry, I'm just going to go through the motions to fool the others. When the time comes, someone will release me and elect me as the new captain." Dustless gave Retsu a smug look, and he closed his eyes in satisfaction. His leisurely appearance was filled with confidence, as if the future was in his hands. It was getting cold and late at night. When Soul Society was about to turn dark, Kuchiki Byakuya, who had left Soul Society for the modern world, finally returned. Other than him and Vice Captain Renji, there was also a haggard-looking girl, Kuchiki Rukia. Captain only crippled his death god power. His life is not in danger. Seeing Rukia's lifeless eyes, Renji Ase sighed with a complicated expression. That kid is just a mere human. You don't have to worry about him so much. Thank you, Renji. Rukia's tone was sincere as she thanked him from the bottom of her heart. He carefully observed Rukia's expression from the corner of his eyes. After hearing that Kuchiki Ichigo's life was not in danger, she became a lot more cheerful. Seeing this scene, Renji Ase was so angry that he stomped his feet. Those bastards in room 46 must be blind. Lucia, the Grim Reaper, is going to be sentenced to death. That Ichigo Shinozaki is not going to get involved. Are those nobles' brains damaged? Renji cursed in his heart. While he was cursing Central 46, he didn't forget to curse Ichigo Shinozaki. He was the one who started all of this, but the main culprit was still safe and sound. Looks like it's going to start soon. Suddenly, a bright light came from the alley 100 meters away. Dustless heard the conversation between Renji Ase, Byakuya, and Rukia clearly. Not killing Shinozaki Ichigo and only crippling his Shinigami's power was your captain's intention. It's an order from the Central Room 46. Kuchiki Byakuya. What a law-abiding captain. Sosuke Aizen used Kyoka Sujetsu to hypnotize Byakuya and gave Byakuya the order to cripple Kuchiki Ichigo's death god power. Dustless glanced at them deeply, then turned his head and disappeared into the night sky. In a few days, Urahara Kisuk will help Kuchiki Ichigo regain his power. Of course, his companions will also invade Soul Society. Everything is about to start. Sosuke Aizen will also officially betray Soul Society. Next is how to trick Sosuke Aizen to kill the head captain. Dustless's brain was spinning rapidly. Sosuke Aizen was not an idiot. He would not blindly challenge the head captain without absolute confidence. While Dustless was looking for a plan to kill the head captain, Kurosaki Ichigo and the others were also undergoing rigorous training. After Kurosaki Byakuya and the others left and returned to Soul Society, Urahara Kisuk immediately looked for Dream and promised to help Kurosaki Ichigo find the Shinigami's power. He thought that he would hesitate, but who knew that the anxious Kurosaki Ichigo would agree to help Urahara Kisuk without thinking. The death of his parents was a huge blow to Kuchiki Ichigo. He also realized how small he was. He could barely deal with a roadside Shinigami, but those captain-level Shinigami could easily kill him. If he was strong enough, Kuchiki Ichigo would not have been taken away by Byakuya. In the end, he was still too weak. All of this was the motivation for Kuchiki Ichigo to become stronger. Chapter 1145. In the blink of an eye, 1 month had passed. During this period, Dustless stayed in Soul Society, quietly waiting for the news of Kurosaki Ichigo and the others invading Soul Society. His strength had reached the peak of perfection. He hid in the 4th Division every day and lived a drunken life with Uno Hanaretsu. Although it was a little boring, Wuchen was also very comfortable with a beautiful woman accompanying him. In the 4th Division's building, Dustless leisurely crossed his legs, staring at the exquisite ceiling. Just now, Uno Hanaretsu was called for a captain's meeting. About half an hour ago, Hell Butterfly called Uno Hanaretsu away. It happened so suddenly that even Dustless didn't know what happened, but he was sure it wasn't something good, because the captains of the various divisions were called to the 1st Division. At this moment, the atmosphere in the 1st Division was very solemn, and the captains were very cautious. Even Shunsui, who was usually carefree, had a serious expression. Captain Aizen is strong. How could he be killed for no reason? 40 minutes ago, the body of the 5th Division's captain, Sosuke Aizen, was found. His death was very tragic, and he was nailed to the wall of Soul Society. This is not normal. There is no large-scale Ryatsu fluctuation. It's impossible to kill a captain silently. Shunsui frowned and analyzed. Sosuke Aizen's strength was known to everyone after the battle with Dustless. He was one of the top existences in Soul Society. If we have to find someone who can kill Captain Aizen silently, I can't think of anyone other than that man, Seizen said, pointing the finger at Dustless. He's still locked in the abyss. How could he go out? How could old man Yamamoto not notice? Shunsui raised his doubts, his voice even heavier. If Dustless could sneak out without anyone noticing, and even head Captain Yamamoto didn't notice, it would be too terrifying. Even so, who else can do it besides him? The 2nd Division's captain, Soifan, looked at Yamamoto. Then let's go to the abyss to take a look. Head Captain Yamamoto's expression sank. He chose to be careful. There's no need for that, right? Uno Walai's expression changed slightly, but in the next second, she covered it up perfectly. Unnecessary action? I don't think there's a need for a routine check. After all, that man was able to withstand the full force of Soul Society's siege by himself. It's normal for him to escape. Zuozhan, who didn't get along with Dustless, said, I agree. After all, Wuchen is not an ordinary person. Everyone knows about his combat strength. Furthermore, I can't think of anyone else who could kill a captain of Soul Society without anyone noticing. The silent Jushri Yukitake said. Unowa clenched her fists tightly. Dustless was still in her 4th Division. Clang! In the dark and deathly silent Avicii hell, a series of rumbles suddenly rang out. Several figures were faintly discernible in the darkness. One could vaguely make out their pure, white captain's feather weaves. There's no one here. Zuozhan was shocked. He used his Ryatsu to search for Dustless, but there was no one here. There was no Ryatsu at all. I say, you idiot dog. How did you become a captain? You can't even see a living person. I suggest you go home, wash up, and sleep. In the deepest part of the dark space, a ripple appeared in the air. Then, a merciless mocking sound entered the ears of the captains. What did you say? Hearing Ji Hao's words, Zuozhan's hair stood straight up. His face blushed as he yelled, How dare you, a treacherous man? Enough, Captain Yamamoto. Head Captain Yamamoto waved his hand and walked close to Dustless. He circled around him and noticed that the seal on Dustless didn't loosen. Then, he said, the seal is still there. Captain Aizen's death has nothing to do with him. I was wondering why you guys came to see me in groups. Looks like you guys are up to no good. Dustless sighed. Then, he said with disdain, Sosuke Aizen is dead? God has finally opened his eyes. It's a pity that I didn't kill him last time. Now that I've caught the murderer, please thank him for me. Hearing this, all the captains frowned. Dustless was strong, and his mouth was vicious. How is this possible? He is clearly in my 4th Division. Her phoenix eyes quietly sized up Wuchen. Uno Walai's mouth was wide open as she tried her best to hide her shock. When Dustless escaped from prison previously, he must have already destroyed all of the seals. Now, it actually became untouched again. How could she not be shocked? Looks like it has nothing to do with him. Zhuizhen lowered his head in disappointment. TSK, TSK. You big black bear are really not a good thing. If I were the one who did it, you would have pulled out your blade and cut me down. You treacherous villain. Seizing the opportunity, Dustless bombarded him indiscriminately, mercilessly mocking Zhuizhen. Because of the Eastern deity fortress, Zhuizhen's relationship with Dustless was not harmonious. Moreover, because Dustless had killed Zhuizhen in an instant a few years ago, he had lost all his face. The grudges between them were like water and fire. Dustless didn't let it go. Just as he was about to attack, a strange spiritual pressure that was as strong as a captain's descended on Soul Society. A captain's spiritual pressure? It's strange. It doesn't seem to belong to Soul Society. Jinglu Chun said solemnly. Could it be that he killed Captain Eisen? Dustless's eyes flashed. He was familiar with the owner of this spiritual pressure. It was Shinozaki Ichigo. Chapter 1146. The invasion of the Traveler's Calamity, and the Ryatsu of one of them was no weaker than a captain's Ryatsu. The entire Soul Society was on high alert, and all the captains returned to their respective divisions to fight the enemy. Uno Anaretsu was no exception. Although the 4th Division wasn't a combat division, they still needed to prepare some medical equipment and medicine. As soon as the battle began, there would be an endless stream of injured people coming to the 4th Division. Why are you back? Just as she rushed into the captain's office, Uno Hanaretsu was stunned. Dustless was sitting with his legs crossed, looking so relaxed that he almost fell asleep. Again? You're so boring. I've been in the 4th Division and haven't moved. Dustless raised his eyebrows and asked. Of course, because the captain was with us, so I went. In just a few minutes, Uno Walai explained everything that had happened to everyone. I see. Seems like you were all fooled by Eisen. How could he be killed? That kid is jumping around happily, and he's about to betray Soul Society. Dustless shook his head with a bitter smile. The Shinigami were all fooled by Eisen. That should be Zanpakuto. You were all hypnotized by Kyoka Sujetsu, and your 5 senses were controlled by Sosuke Eisen. Naturally, you can't tell right from wrong. Squinting his eyes, Dustless lazily explained. Eisen Sosuke was killed? That was impossible. There was no one in this world who could say that they could kill him. Eisen Sosuke was strong and cunning. His stats were perfect. If Dustless didn't know about Eisen Sosuke's past, he might have been fooled by him. It's okay. Don't worry. That kid's every move is within my plan. It won't be long before he takes advantage of this chaos to ambush the captain. Dustless's eyes flashed red as he said coldly, Yamamoto's Jinryu Saishigakuni is coming to an end. He already saw Aizen's Kyoka Sujetsu being at a disadvantage, and now I took away his Zanpakuto's ability. If I'm not wrong, the strongest Shinigami in a millennium is about to enter the end. Hearing this, Uno Walai's eyes clearly dimmed and became listless. Lie, there's no need to feel sad. I was only able to lead the Grim Reaper forward after I became the head captain. He's already a few thousand years old. He's not suitable to be the head captain. Dustless patted Uno Walai's shoulder and comforted her. His long-cherished wish is for Soul Society to be peaceful. Only under my leadership can Soul Society be truly peaceful. That's true. After letting out a heavy sigh, Uno Hanaretsu could not deny that Dustless was stronger than head Captain Yamamoto, so he was destined to be a greater threat. Boom, boom, boom. Powerful spiritual pressure spread out in all directions, and the surrounding buildings were all shattered. The shockwaves produced by the battle between the two figures turned the surrounding area into a large vacuum zone. What kind of monster is this guy? He's completely fine after being hit. Shinozaki Ichigo held his Zanpakuto with both hands as he looked at the man who was confronting him in horror. This man was close to 2 meters tall, and his body was covered in wounds, especially the crescent-shaped wound on his abdomen. An ordinary person would have died on the spot, but this man with a rough face was completely fine. Zaraki Kenpachi? This name appeared in his mind, and combined with the 11 written by Captain Haori, Shinozaki Ichigo instantly remembered the captains that Urahara Kisuke mentioned before. The crazy laughter came out of Zaraki's mouth, and it made people's hair stand on end. He said with a hideous smile, "It seems that I came to the right place to fight with you. In Soul Society, there are 13 captains as strong as you." Shinozaki Ichigo's forehead was covered in cold sweat, and his heart was extremely heavy. Strong? What nonsense are you talking about? I was killed by that man in an instant. Although there are 13 captains, they're not the strongest. Dustless's figure appeared in his mind, and Zaraki's murderous aura suddenly stagnated, and he became talkative, but that guy was suppressed more than 10 years ago. Gulp. You were killed by someone in an instant? Shinozaki Ichigo's voice was trembling, and his pupils were enlarged several times. He suddenly felt a chill on his back. How strong is he to be able to kill a captain in an instant? After hearing that he was suppressed, he breathed a sigh of relief. In the central room 46, 3 figures gathered. They were Aizen Sosuke, Ikamaru Jin, and Higashi Sunmei, who had already faded out of sight. His arms that were cut off by Dustless were also restored by Aizen Sosuke with the power of Hogyoku. Aizen-sama. Higashi Sunmei was extremely grateful, and his voice was choked with emotion, and he almost knelt down and kowtowed. Aizen Sosuke just nodded. His heart was like ice, and he didn't even look at Higashi Sunmei. If his 10 blades weren't destroyed by Dustless, Aizen would have killed him immediately. This is the last step of our plan, and we can leave Soul Society. Looking at the first division in the distance, Aizen Sosuke said expressionlessly, "The last step?" Higashi Sunmei and Ikamaru Jin looked at each other, and then at Aizen Sosuke. Aizen glanced at the two and said coldly, "Kill Yamamoto." Chapter 1147. Hearing Sosuke Aizen's monologue, Ikamaru Jin and Isanin Yoro felt like their brains weren't enough to process it. Their brain cells were instantly killed. "Are you sure you want to do this? The head captain's combat power isn't something we can handle." Ise-sensei Yoru's face shrank. His reputation as the strongest Shinigami wasn't groundless. It was earned through countless battles. "I deliberately attracted Ichigo Shinozaki to his Soul Society to distract the Godai 13. We can take this opportunity to see how strong-head Captain Yamamoto really is." Aizen glanced at Higashian and said in a firm and fearless tone, "If we're afraid of Yamamoto, then there's no need to worry about Division 0, which is stronger than the Godai 13. Ise-sensei Yoru immediately shut up after hearing this. Even the head captain didn't dare to fight them. How could he wipe out Team 0? Everything was just empty talk. On the other side, the battle between Ichigo Shinozaki and Zaraki Kenpachi was also coming to an end. Both of them were covered in wounds. Boom, boom, boom. The white Ryatsu and the golden Ryatsu collided with each other, causing a huge explosion. Both of them stared at each other, preparing for the final blow. Ha ha. It was a carefree laugh, but combined with Zaraki's hideous face and his bleeding body, it gave people a sense of hysteria. Ever since I fought with that guy, I haven't felt so good like today. I want to thank you, Ichigo Shinozaki. Zaraki laughed wildly. His eyes were red, and his body was uncontrollably excited. The battle with Dustless was very frustrating. He used all his strength, but in the end, he couldn't touch Dustless. Even if he was right in front of him, he couldn't do anything. He couldn't hit Dustless. Instead of a battle, Zaraki felt like he was a clown performing alone. "You can't stop me. You must save Rukia." Ichigo Shinozaki's eyes were shining brightly, and his tone was firm. This was a duel between two beasts. Roar, roar, roar. Zaraki Kenpachi and Kurosaki Ichigo tensed up. Perhaps it was due to their desire to win. Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu suddenly changed, becoming violent and bloodthirsty. This unique spirit pressure swept across the sky and landed in every corner of Silent Soul Society. This seems to be the smell of void. In the dark space, a strange murmur sounded. Under the first team's quarters was the infernal hell. There was clearly a person tied to a specially made stone chair. This person was tightly bound by mysterious black bandages, unable to move. Only his mouth was exposed, and even his eyes were sealed. Although the person's appearance could not be seen clearly, it was not difficult to distinguish from the thin and small outline that this person was dustless. Unlike Aizen's Kyoka Sujetsu, Dustless's Zanpakuto was being restrained. This is undoubtedly Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu, but there is also the Void's Ryatsu. It seems that when I awakened the Shinigami's power, I also awakened the Void's power. Dustless muttered to himself. Even if he couldn't see, he was quite familiar with Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu. The moment it was exposed, he could almost determine that it was Kurosaki Ichigo. Forget it. He's just a chess piece. No need to care. Feeling the level of Ryatsu, Dustless decisively ignored Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu. This Ryatsu was comparable to the captain level, but compared to him or Aizen, it was not worth mentioning. I hope the Four Maple Court's Yoruchi will hurry up. I don't feel comfortable staying in this damn place for one more second. In the dark and cold space, the surroundings were dead silent, as if there was no one in hell, isolated from the world. Is it finally here? The show is about to start. The corner of Dustless's mouth curled up slightly. Suddenly, he raised his head, and above him was the first team's quarters. Yamamoto, who was in the first team, looked at the distant sky and quietly observed the busy Shinigami. Almost all the Shinigami of each division were searching for the traces of the traveling calamities. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the spacious open-air conference room, 3 figures suddenly appeared. They were all wearing the captain's haori, and their faces were not friendly, especially the blood-stained Zanpakuto. Captain Ikamaru Jin. Captain Aizen, aren't you dead? And E-sensei wants you? Bastard, weren't you locked up in the Avicii hell? Who the hell let you out? The captain, who regained his senses, was filled with murderous intent. Captain Aizen, you're asking so many questions at once at such an old age. Looking at Yamamoto, Aizen smiled and said, but I'm in a good mood today, and since I'm about to go to hell, I'll answer your questions one by one. A few decades ago, the Hogyoku that E-sensei took when he escaped from Soul Society was actually developed by me. Today, I'm also the one who let him out, and my death is also fake. Today, the traveling calamities invaded Soul Society, and the purpose is to distract the captains, and then I'll take the opportunity to kill you. So much nonsense to kill a person. Dustless, who was locked in hell, curled his lips. Through the consciousness hidden in the Hogyoku, Aizen and the captain's conversation was clear. He silently hoped that Aizen would quickly become the captain, and the future of Soul Society would be taken over by Dustless. Chapter 1148. Dustless heard Yamamoto's crisis clearly. Now that he was deprived of his Zanpakuto, and he had seen Aizen's Kyoka Sujitsu Shurikai, he was doomed. Especially since it was a 3v1, Yamamoto's situation was critical, and Aizen's victory was in his favor. Old man, it's better that you die quickly. Save yourself the trouble of bossing people around every day. Let me take your place to protect the peace of Soul Society. With a frosty expression, Dustless sneered in his heart. After Yamamoto died, his position as the captain would be vacant, and Dustless would have the opportunity to take it. Boom, boom, boom. Even without the Zanpakuto, the strength of the head captain was still extraordinarily powerful. The aura all over his body burst out, and it was very shocking. Ikamaru Jin and E-sensei were sweating profusely. Only Aizen Sosuke felt better. Soul Society didn't do anything wrong to you. Why did you betray Soul Society? Betray Soul Society? Betray the entire Shinigami? Do you want to learn from Dustless? Sosuke Aizen. The captain's tone was 3 parts sadness and 7 parts hatred. Learn from him? How is that possible? My plan was born hundreds of years ago, and he wasn't even born at that time. Hearing this, Aizen said with disdain, and his eyes locked onto Yamamoto, I was the one who caused that group of captains to disappear 100 years ago. You. Hearing this, Yamamoto's heart trembled, and he clenched his fists, and his spiritual pressure erupted even more fiercely. Seeing this, Ikamura Jin grinned as he unsheathed his Zanpakuto and laughed. Kill him, Shinigami. Shoo shoo shoo. Almost in an instant, Jin's Zanpakuto extended hundreds of times and was about to pierce through Yamamoto's Jinrusai, Shigekuni. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal colliding was heard, and the Shinigami was pushed back by a powerful force, and the wall behind Yamamoto was penetrated. A cool breeze blew in, and the mysterious person's hair fluttered in the wind. "Oh, Captain Kyoka and Captain Yukitake, your mission is to search for Yamamoto, and attacking without permission is a big problem." Jin's hand shook, and he took back his Shinigami. It was Kyoka, Shunsui, and Yukitake, Jushuru. "Yosuke Fuji, is what you said just now true?" Yukitake, Jushuru's face was extremely pale. From the way he called him, Aizen and Yukitake Jushuru's relationship was very deep. "As you can see, it is my wish to destroy Shinigami and establish a new order." Looking at Yukitake Jushuru's sad eyes, Aizen's heart was as calm as still water, without the slightest change his heart. Sosuke Aizen didn't have any feelings for this person. He even hated him. His naive thoughts were the opposite of Sosuke Aizen's beliefs. "Silver, yes. I'll leave Captain Jinglu and Captain Floating Bamboo to the two of you. Just hold him back. As for the head captain, I'll take his life." Higashi-sensei and Jin looked at each other and pulled out their swords to attack. Boom, boom, boom. The swords danced, and Ryatsu raged, and the team's house was instantly razed to the ground. The tyrannical Ryatsu was unstoppable, and everything it touched was turned into dust. "Why don't you pull out your sword, head captain?" Staring at the head captain, Aizen pointed out, "Are you deliberately holding back, or is your Zanpakuto ineffective now?" Hearing this, the head captain's sunken eyes suddenly bulged out, and he stared at Aizen and guessed. "Are you the one who took away my Zanpakuto's ability?" It seems like the Hogyoka's consciousness is right. This old guy's Bankai can't be used, and Ryujin Jaka that can destroy the world has become an ordinary Zanpakuto. Seeing this, Aizen's confidence skyrocketed, and he looked at the head captain with eyes full of fighting spirit. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. He pulled out Kyoka's Sujetsu and raised his hand to attack. "Oh, do you think you can escape?" Jin and Higashi-sensei wanted to chase Shunsui and Yukitake Jushuru, but Jin's face was full of ridicule. "Is that so? You two may have forgotten that this is Soul Society." Floating in the air, Shunsui stabilized his body and said in a deep voice, "There are many other captains in Soul Society. You should be the ones running, not us." "Are you sure?" Hearing this, Higashi-sensei's old-fashioned face showed a rare, playful expression. "Be careful, Yukitake. They must be plotting something. Since they dared to attack the old man, it means that they have a backup plan, and Aizen is the kind of man who can see 3 things ahead of him." Shunsui lowered his head and said solemnly, "That's right." Yukitake Jushura nodded and looked around at the two, tense and alert. "No matter what, let's tell the captains the news of these 3 defecting to Soul Society." Shunsui pondered, then he stretched out his hand, and countless deep black holes suddenly appeared in the void, and a dignified voice spread out. "Bakudo's 77. Heavenly Kongluo. Everyone, there's an urgent matter that needs to be told." Shuinsui's voice rang in the ears of the captains and vice-captains of the Godai 13. Chapter 1149. The captains of Soul Society all heard Shuinsui's voice, and even the invading traveler Calamity received special treatment from Shunsui. "Everyone, I'll keep it short." Shunsui calmed himself down and said, "Aizen Yusuke and Ikamar Jin have betrayed Soul Society. E-sensei was also released from infernal hell by them. Come and help us." With that, Shuinsui's clenched fists loosened, and the dark cracks in the black cavity used for communication were all closed. "Phew, you can't escape this time." Shunsui breathed a sigh of relief, and his sad face regained some color. Is that so? Ikamaru Jin still maintained his sly smile. He was very cunning and despicable. His expression didn't change. He had already expected this. Jushiro Yukitake and Shunsui didn't say anything. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After a few minutes of confrontation, there were several explosions in the sky, and then the captains of each division arrived. Seems like they're all here. Jin's narrowed eyes suddenly opened, and his gaze was like a viper's. You actually chose to die together. Your sincere feelings are really tearful. East Sinjin sneered before Jin could speak. How dare mere traitor be so arrogant? The captains glared and released their spiritual pressure, and when they were about to suppress the two together, a violent explosion made their hearts tremble. Head Captain Sama. The old body was mercilessly blown away, smashing through several walls and leaving a long mark on the ground. He was covered in blood. Sosuke Aizen, who was holding his Zanpakuto, was unharmed. Head Captain Sama, why didn't you release your Zanpakuto? The captains were shocked and puzzled at the same time, and they were worried about the head captain. On the other hand, Aizen was relaxed, and they were confused. It's useless for the head captain to release his Zanpakuto. He saw Aizen-sama's Shurkai, and he's doomed to lose. East Sinjin said calmly, I'll go help the old man. Shunsui lowered the brim of his hat and said decisively, Help him? You'll die if you go. Jin smiled and said, What's more, you don't have time to save others. You should worry about your own safety. Ka. Jin's words were like a prelude to destruction. Dozens of large crescent-shaped cracks appeared in the sky above Silent Soul Society. Is this a black voice? Bastard. As Shinigami, you actually colluded with the Great Void. The expressions of the captains changed, and they finally understood why Jin and Ise Senshi were so fearless. Roar, roar, kill all the death gods. Don't let any of them go. Inside the Black Chamber, the excited shouts of the Great Void Realm experts could be heard. They flew out of the Black Chamber like flies, looking at the beautiful scenery below. The Soul Society seemed to have been injected with chicken blood as they all flew down like a swarm of bees. This is bad. Jingle Chunshui and the other death gods led the team leaders' expressions changed drastically. Most of these voids were trash, belonging to the lowest level of existence, but they had the advantage in numbers. The densely packed voids almost covered the sky above Soul Society. I'll stop some voids. I'll leave this to you guys. Just as she was about to leave, a black flash of light descended from the sky. Ha! 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 Boom, boom, boom. A giant flame mushroom cloud exploded in front of Soy Foam, blocking her path. Looking up, a group of great voids walked out of the Black Chamber. Each of them took off their masks, and the most eye-catching thing was that they had weapons similar to Zanpakuto. These guys are the protagonists. The captain's expressions were extremely ugly. The great voids before were just small fries. There are three Vasto Lord. The captains looked at each other, sweat dripping from their foreheads. Stark, Ulquiorra, and Hellable were clearly visible. In addition, there were also Jin and Ise Senshi. There were also a few Achuka's level Aaron cars. The scales of victory were obviously leaning towards Aizen Sosuke's side. Everyone, although it's a bit embarrassing, I still hope you can hold on for a while. At this moment, Jingle Chunshu suddenly said, turning his head to look at the captain who was temporarily suppressed by Aizen Sosuke. His hesitant eyes became more resolute. Aizen Sosuke's Kyokasujetsu was invincible. If he wanted to preserve Soul Society, he had to find another way. Using Shuinpa to the extreme, he disappeared in an instant. If this continues, Soul Society will definitely be annihilated in the end. The situation seems to be beyond imagination. In the deepest part of hell, Dustless whispered. At the same time, he understood Aizen Sosuke's intention. He wanted to use this opportunity to wipe out Shinigami in one fell swoop and completely wipe out Soul Society's Shinigami. Clang! In the dead space, there was a sudden roar of steel, and observation hockey spread out. Are you finally coming to let me out? The Four Maple Courts, Ichi finally came to fulfill the original cooperation treaty. Exhaling heavily, the figure was getting closer and closer. Carefully using observation hockey to lock on the newcomer, his relaxed face suddenly solidified, and his mouth uncontrollably said, "Jingle Chunshui, it's you." Jingle Chunshui's body stiffened when he heard the words, looking at Dustless in surprise, and his heart was raging for a long time. This guy's whole body was bound, and his Ryatsu, including his eyes, was sealed. He didn't release his Ryatsu himself, but Dustless guessed his identity. It's as if he has other eyes. How did you find out? Forget it. These are superfluous. Thinking of the terrible situation of Soul Society today, Jingle Chunshue could only say the important things. Chapter 1150. Fiercely sucking in a mouthful of ice-cold air and calming his restless and burning heart, Shuinsue's thoughts became a lot clearer. He deeply looked at the man who was tied to the chair. Every time he met him, there would always be a different kind of miracle. Let's cut to the chase. I'm here to tell you that your enemy, Sosuke Aizen, has betrayed Soul Society and is now on the same path as you. After that, Shunsui stared at Dustless and added, "He definitely won't let you go." So what? There are countless people who won't let me go. In the end, I'm the one who has the last laugh. Dustless's expression was ordinary, but he knew that Shunsui was implying something. "You don't seem to understand what I mean." Seeing that Dustless didn't understand, Shunsui went straight to the point. "Sosuke Aizen's purpose is the same as yours." "Oh no, it's even more hateful than yours. He wants to kill all the Shinigami. Although you're now in prison, don't think that you can stay out of it. After all the Shinigami are finished, the next target will be you." Shuinsue's tone was serious and threatening. What he meant was that everyone was now in the same boat. "So that's how it is. You want to borrow my strength to deal with Sosuke Aizen?" Dustless suddenly understood Shuinsue's intention. After calculating the gains and losses, he suddenly felt that this plan was feasible. He could use this opportunity to clear his identity and wash away the previous stain. But even so, Dustless couldn't agree in a hurry. At least, he had to delay until the head captain died, and he had to give some benefits before he could compromise. If he agreed casually, it might arouse Shuinsue's suspicion. Don't be fooled by his casual appearance. He was actually very meticulous. Any flaw would be caught by him. "You want me to help you? Dream on." Dustless showed a sour face and directly refused. Silent Soul Society was already in a mess. Battles were going on everywhere. Even Shinozaki Ichigo was besieged by the Daimaku. Perhaps it was because of his charisma that a Sanjing Renji chose to fight together with him. He even released Rukia, who was imprisoned. At the same time, on the other side, Jin Ikamaru and East Sensei joined forces with the three Vasto Lord Great Emptiness, suppressing the captains to the point that they couldn't breathe. Pucci. The white sword pressure was unstoppable as it pressed down on Sosuke Aizen. "Child's play. You're just SOSO without Ryujin Jaka." Sosuke Aizen's mouth curved into an elegant smile. Kyoka Sujitsu condensed a high density of Ryatsu in the tip of the blade. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. With a wave of his hand, the tip of his saber became glossy, and the two sword presences inevitably collided. Boom, 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 boom. The intense sword pressures collided fiercely, and the aftermath spread out. No one was willing to give in, and they both wore down each other's strength. In the end, the two sword pressures canceled each other out, and no one hurt the other. Only the first team was flattened by the shockwave. Yamamoto was so angry that his bones trembled, but he could only endure it. Whoosh! A violent hurricane came head-on, and the momentum was sharp, obviously with a cold light. Looking closely, it turned out to be a Zanpakuto that was coming head-on. Yamamoto's movements were even more strange. Even if he realized the danger, he pretended not to know. Pucci. The Zanpakuto penetrated Yamamoto's body, leaving a bright red mark. One-hit kill. No matter how good you are, this is the end. Sosuke Aizen chuckled. The nail buried in his body was removed, and he was in a good mood. Yamamoto's heart was crushed by him. Even if this old man dies, I will drag you down with me. Yamamoto used the last of his strength to grab Aizen's arm. His Ryatsu erupted like magma. Die together? Don't joke around. What you're holding now is just an illusion created by Kyoka Suigetsu. It's not the real me. Sosuke, Aizen replied calmly, his expression unchanged. Don't try to fool this old man. Your ability is indeed terrifying. After fighting for so long, this old man couldn't even touch your clothes. Yamamoto's body was full of holes, and Sosuke, Aizen's clothes were clean. Kyoka Suigetsu's ability was terrifying, and Aizen couldn't even catch his real body. However, your Ryatsu won't lie. This old man is sure that this is your real body. Hearing this, Sosuke Aizen's pupil shrank, and his face turned green. He said with a hoarse voice, "So, you deliberately exposed a flaw to lure me? You're gambling with your life." Yamamoto smiled and looked at him with disdain. "This is why you're not as good as Captain Dustless. You only know how to use despicable abilities." This old man fought him head-on. Aizen was like a stone, and he didn't have the slightest emotion. The winner was king, and there was no such thing as being honorable or despicable. History was written by the victors. Die with this old man. Heido's 96, one-sword cremation. Yamamoto's entire body emitted a boiling Ryatsu that was close to materialization. Yamamoto used his final technique, and a blade-shaped flame engulfed him and Aizen. Boom, boom, boom. An earth-shattering explosion spread, and it spread to every corner of Soul Society. The power was enough to flatten half of Soul Society. Yamamoto's Ryatsu completely disappeared, and the ruthless flames evaporated him. The strongest Shinigami of this generation had fallen. Chapter 11:51. Somehow, Shunsui also seemed to feel the death of the head captain. His heart suddenly trembled, the corner of his eyes twitched slightly, and he remained silent. He needed time to stabilize his sadness. You don't have a choice now. With a cold look, Shunsui decisively chose to shut up. It was a waste of time to talk nonsense with people like Dustless. His thick, hairy arms grabbed the stone chair he was sitting on. His Zanpakuto was unsheathed, and he looked at Dustless indifferently. What do you want to do? Seeing this, Dustless's face changed slightly, instinctively realizing that something bad was going to happen. Shuinsue's eyes were dead, without any extra emotion, as cold as a machine. Dustless keenly smelled other intentions. Staring at Shuinsue's face, he suddenly felt that this guy was going to cut off all means of retreat. Shunsui didn't speak. His eyes narrowed as he looked at the chain connected to the stone chair, and his Zanpakuto slashed straight. Clang, clang, clang. Sparks flew everywhere. The chain couldn't withstand the force, and suddenly broke. Shuinsue's Zanpakuto cut off the thick chain, and the bound stone chair suddenly loosened. According to the current situation, borrowing your power is necessary. Otherwise, Soul Society's end will be miserable. Don't think you can stay out of this matter. After saying that, Shunsui directly carried the huge stone chair out of Avicii Hell. This bastard wants to use me as a tool. Suddenly understanding Shuinsue's intention, Dustless's eyes twitched, thinking of a countermeasure. In the outside world, everyone stared blankly at the scorched earth of Quiet Soul Society. The massive attack caused the entire sky to tremble. Even the Jillian Knights, who had been slaughtering without any sense of reason, stopped their earth-shattering attacks. It was self-evident what the disappearance of the head captain's spiritual pressure meant. If a person's heart was still beating, spiritual pressure would continue to overflow, and when it completely disappeared, it also meant that the heart stopped beating. The strongest Shinigami in 1,000 years had become history, disappearing in the long river of time. This old man is really crazy. I was almost killed by him. In the sad atmosphere, there was an untimely sound of rejoicing. Aizen Sosuke appeared in front of everyone. If he wasn't prepared in advance, he might have been killed. Ran, you, Jia. Sosuke Aizen's appearance immediately attracted the hatred of the Shinigami, especially Sajin, who glared at him with bloodshot eyes. He shouted at the top of his lungs, "Bankai, Kalasutra King of Heaven's Punishment!" The earth suddenly trembled, and then a huge shadow appeared in the sky. Soul Society became dim, and a giant Zanpakuto that could cut the sky fell from the sky. Aizen Sosuke turned his head and glanced at the left side of the village. Then he looked away and simply ignored it. At the same time, a sharp black blade fell from the sky. Doubt Breaker 90, Black Coffin. The left side of Kamimura was like the gravity of the earth, attracting all the sharp edges of the black light. His broad body was the best target. Pucci, Pucci, Pucci. The powerful light ruthlessly crushed the left side of Kamimura, and his body was bleeding like a funnel. Although I only used 1/3 of the power, it's enough to deal with you. Aizen glanced at the left side of Kamimura and muttered to himself. Boom! Kamimura, who was heavily injured, finally couldn't break the Bankai. After breaking the Bankai, he fell to the ground powerlessly. His breath was weak, and he was only one step away from death. Aizen-sama. Seeing Aizen Sosuke appear, Arankar, who was fighting with the Shinigami, immediately knelt on one knee to show his loyalty. I thought I would need to go to Hueco Mundo to fight against the Shinigami, but it seems that was unnecessary. Looking around at the smoke-filled Soul Society, Aizen Sosuke's majestic voice thundered across the world. Destroy all the Shinigami now. Although I don't know what's going on, the bastard who ordered the capture of Rukia was you, right? A ray of light came from behind, and Aizen Sosuke turned his head, revealing half of his face. His eyes flashed with a strange light, but he quickly calmed down. So it's you, Kurosaki Ichigo. You're a good pawn. Hearing this, Kurosaki Ichigo was furious. He had just learned Bankai, and his Zanpakuto was about to cut off Aizen Sosuke's head. Aizen Sosuke shook his head contemptuously and stretched out his arm. Clang! His 5 fingers easily grabbed the Zanpakuto's body, and Kurosaki Ichigo couldn't move. This, you caught my Zanpakuto with your bare hands? Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes widened, and he looked at Aizen with a stunned expression. Aizen's eyes made his soul tremble. Aizen's expression was cold, and he used Kyoka Sujetsu, and a cold ripple splashed in the air. Pucci! Kurosaki Ichigo felt a sharp pain in his chest as a ghastly wound suddenly appeared on his chest. He had instantly killed a Shinigami that was comparable to a captain. His casual attitude reminded everyone of Dustless in the past. He also killed a captain-level Shinigami in one hit, and the so-called captain-level Shinigami was as fragile as a chicken in front of them. Boom, boom, boom. A thick pillar of energy exploded, and a violent hurricane swept across Soul Society. The ground beneath the ground burst open, and a figure rushed out from it. Boom! Shunsui, who was carrying a stone chair, landed safely and put the sealed Dustless on the ground. You're out. Feeling that his body suddenly became a lot warmer, Dustless couldn't help but look up, and his sealed eyes vaguely saw the sun. Chapter 1152. The appearance of Wu Chun and Jingle Chunshui immediately pushed the atmosphere of the scene to another climax. They all looked at the two people unexpectedly. You should have died a few years ago, right? Why are you still alive? Aizen, who was the first to recover, was shocked. He forced himself to suppress the horror in his heart. He saw Jin kill Dustless with his own eyes, and now he suddenly came back from the dead. How could he not be shocked? Sosuke Aizen wasn't the only one who was shocked. The other captains were the same. They were very familiar with this face that they wanted to forget, but could never forget. It was almost imprinted in their hearts. So. The captains who were fighting against the Great Void Masters all landed beside Shunshui and said with an unfriendly expression, Captain Shunshui, why did you release this evil man? Do you think that Soul Society is not chaotic enough and want to speed up its destruction? Hearing this, without waiting for Shunsui to answer, Dustless turned his head and said, even if he couldn't see, He knew that this person was Soy Fawn through his observation haki. Makes sense. Kachiki Byakuya nodded. Captain, Rukia, Hinamori, and Matsumoto all had complicated expressions. If it wasn't for Dustless, they might still be wandering in the Shinkai Academy and be regarded as their teacher. Sensing the high Ryatsu level of the three, Dustless smiled and said softly, "So it's you three? Long time no see. It seems that you have improved a lot. Everyone, I can understand your dissatisfaction and resentment, and I will naturally be willing to be punished in the future. However, Soul Society is now in an unprecedented crisis, and I will naturally be punished if I can survive this. But, speaking up to here, Shunsui looked at the great void in the sky and felt extremely melancholy. Jillian, who was still walking out of the black cavity, felt his heart fall to the bottom. Shunsui looked at Dustless and said, "Using evil to fight evil, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Ah, you are really cunning. You want to use me as a tool to deal with Aizen? At the very least, you have to remove the seal on my body. Otherwise, I can only passively take a beating and all of you death gods might be annihilated." His words were full of threats, implying that he would not work until the seal was broken. No, I'm firmly against it. If the seal was broken, who would be able to control him? Don't forget the dangers of the past. The captain of the 10th Division, Toshiro Hifani, said in a mature tone, not like a child at all. You're right. Hearing this, Jingle Chunshue nodded. This worry was not unreasonable. It was hard to tell what a person was thinking. If Dustless took the opportunity to betray them, Soul Society, which was gradually losing, would not be able to contemplate the consequences. Then release the seal on his eyes. Shuinsue's eyes shone brightly as he said, resolutely, "Even if we die, we have no choice. It's best to use his power to fight Sosuke Aizen." All the captains were silent. Although they felt very uncomfortable in their hearts, they knew that this was an undeniable fact. They could only walk this path to the end. Even if they knew that hell was ahead, they could only press forward. It's good that you can understand. Shuinsue's dry mouth revealed a faint smile. Silence meant agreement. Immediately, he reached out and grabbed the black bandage next to Dustless's eyes. Humph! Don't even think about letting him go. Do you think we don't exist? The demonic voice fell. Dongsung Yu's Zanpakuto swept towards them, temporarily forcing the captains to retreat. Only Dustless was left alone and bound in place. The chilling laughter came out from Dustless's throat. Looking closely, the black bandage that sealed his left eye had been torn off by Shunsui. The purple eye was exposed to the air. Bastard! Dongsung Yu was furious. His Zanpakuto was surrounded by cold, murderous intent. He raised his Zanpakuto and slashed towards Dustless's head. Naive. The Ryatsu and chakra in Wu Chen's body were released. Even if his 4 limbs were still sealed, a mere East Sage would not be able to hurt him. Heido 96, the silent Ryatsu went berserk, and the fermented ground turned red. It was very hot. A huge flame in the shape of a sword was printed on the scorched ground. This is Dongsung Yu's Zanpakuto suddenly stopped. He looked at the ground under his feet in horror. He remembered that the captain almost killed Aizen Sosuke with the forbidden Heido. He quickly retreated. Everyone, leave quickly. This is cremation with sword. Shuinsue's pupil shrank as he quickly shouted. At the same time, he also quickly retreated. He looked at Dustless with his eyes wide open and called him a madman. In order to break the seal, he chose to use Heido 96 to attack him. Cremation with sword. The blue sky turned dark red again, and the ravaged, quiet soul courtyard cracked open again. The power of this move was beyond imagination. The moment the fire broke through the ground, all life, no matter if it was a Shinigami or a Daimoku, were forced to retreat by the destructive temperature, including Aizen Sosuke. Boom, boom, boom. The dark red magma sword exploded, and the aftermath shattered the Daimoku, who did not have time to escape, including the black space that connected Soul Society and Hueco Mundo. In front of cremation with sword, nothing was worth mentioning. It was as fragile as paper. In the distance, Aizen Sosuke's face turned black as he clenched his fists. He felt an unprecedented humiliation. Just now, he actually ran away. His old face turned red, and his body stopped responding in the blink of an eye. What the hell is this thing made of? It's so hard. It was hit by cremation with sword, but it was not damaged at all. Dustless's whisper came from the fire pillar that connected heaven and earth. Chapter 1153. Whether it was the Great Void or the Shinigami, they were all stunned. The flames from a fire pillar almost made them collapse. They felt like they were walking in magma hundreds of meters away. And Dustless, who was in the center zone, actually did not even have the slightest reaction. His entire person was calm and collected, without the slightest injury. The desolate tone, just now, was clearly complaining that the power of cremation was too weak and that it couldn't destroy the various sealing items that bound him. You bastard! Tozai Isami's murderous intent locked onto Dustless, who was bathing in the fire pillar. He felt like his heart was being cut into pieces. Don't worry about these Shinigami. Attack that seal man with all your strength. Looking around to the Great Void, Aizen ordered coldly. He pointed his spear at Dustless. Most of the captains had seen his Kyoka Sujetsu, so it was easy to deal with him. Only this monster was the most difficult to deal with. He had seen the release of Kyoka Sujetsu, but he wasn't affected at all. Ah! The Great Void Realm experts nodded one after another. They all used their strongest moves to attack Wuchun. He sat on a special stone chair and was sealed to the point that he couldn't move. He was a natural living target. So. All kinds of void flashes filled the sky. The sky above Soul Society was dyed in different colors. All kinds of void flashes bombarded Dustless. Rukia, do we need to help him? Looking at the sealed Dustless, Kurosaki Ichigo's heart was bursting. He ignored the wound on his chest and said seriously, "That guy called Aizen is very strong. He killed me with one strike." Shimu Rukia glanced at Shinozaki Ichigo and said, "Is that so? However, Captain Wuchun once killed Aizen Sosuke in one hit." Kurosaki Ichigo's mouth opened so wide that it could fit a fist. His head instantly exploded. If he could be killed by void flashes, Soul Society wouldn't have to spend so much effort to catch him. His combat power is higher than the entire Godiai 13. Shunsui lowered his hat and said seriously. The captains lowered their heads and pondered. Although they were quite unhappy with Shuansue's words, they couldn't deny that it was true. What's this illuminating light? Dustless curled his lips in disdain. His left eye suddenly widened, and an overbearing aura rose into the sky. Golden ripples visible to the naked eye spread like waves. Haoshiku Haki swept across the entire sky above Soul Society. The incoming void flashes didn't touch Dustless and exploded in the air. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions were incessant, and all kinds of void flashes exploded one after another. In just a minute, the sky above Soul Society was filled with the aftermath of all kinds of void flashes and explosions, turning into a forbidden area. Only Dustless seemed to be unaffected, and the others all retreated. The group of Grim Reapers looked at Dustless, who was standing peacefully with a complicated expression. They felt very upset. The death of the head captain was as if the backbone of Soul Society was broken. All the captains had lost their faith and were at a loss. Looking at Dustless, they secretly sighed. The dignity of Soul Society needs a prisoner to defend it. It's ridiculous. Whoosh! Amidst the black smoke, an ear-piercing howl was heard. Looking up, a great void was dashing over at the speed of light. There was a shiny long gun in his hand. Ulquiorra. Only half of his eye was exposed, which was the reincarnation Sharingan. Dustless joked, worthy of being Aizen Sosuke's #1 loyal dog. Oh no, the #1 loyal fan. Void detection nerves and hearing were second to none. Dustless's words were clearly heard by Ulquiorra. His Ryatsu suddenly increased, and the Ryatsu in his hand shined brighter. Whoosh! His diving body suddenly stopped, and a long gun in his hand was thrown out forcefully. Thunder spear. The tip of the spear flashed with lightning, and the sharp crackling sound was even more chilling. With Ulquiorra's anger, it smashed toward Dustless. Whether it was the number one dog or the number one fan, it deeply hurt Ulquiorra's self-esteem. Dustless's eyes were fixed on the falling spear, and an irregular black flame flashed in his eyes. Amaterasu. A black flame burned on the body of the thunder spear. In the blink of an eye, it swallowed the entire spear. When it was about to hit Dustless, it was swallowed up by Amaterasu. Ulquiorra opened his mouth, but he didn't say anything. "I'll just defeat you all in one fell swoop," Dustless muttered to himself. His tone was as plain as eating and drinking. "With your current state?" Eisen raised his voice and mocked. "Do you know how many voiders are in Soul Society now? I can tell you clearly that this number is impossible to estimate. If I have to find an adjective, it would be thousands of voiders. You can't do it, but it doesn't mean that others can't." Dustless glanced at them and whispered, "Kai Bao of the King." The void behind Dustless splashed thousands of ripples, and then countless divine weapons came out from it. The sky behind Dustless was dyed golden by the massive number of weapons. 1,000, 10,000, tens of thousands. It was like a bottomless pit, and the number of weapons kept increasing. No one knew the exact number, but above the great voiders of Soul Society, there were hundreds of divine weapons floating above their heads. How many abilities does this guy have? Eisen was stunned, and his eyes were burning with jealousy. He looked at Dustless with jealousy. This guy seemed to be omnipotent, and there was no ability that he didn't know. Chapter 1154. All kinds of divine artifacts were scattered all over the sky of Soul Society. The sky was crushed, and there was almost no end to it. From afar, it looked like a large dark cloud. Bastard, seeing this, Eisen Soak's hair dripped with sweat, and he finally lost his arrogant appearance. His eyes stared fixedly at Dustless, and he felt an unprecedented sense of defeat. This damn guy was sealed, and just one eye was enough to make him powerless. "Die, all of you." A lazy voice fell, and the fate of countless greater voids was instantly decided. All kinds of divine weapons hovering in the void fell to the ground. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. Oh. In half an hour, the sound of bodies being crushed and hysterical screams became the main theme of Soul Society, sweeping through the entire Soul Society. That horrifying howl almost caused their minds to collapse. How is this possible? What kind of ability does this guy have? Looking at the army of Hueco Mundo being crushed in an instant, the captains were shocked speechless, and their hearts almost jumped out of their chests. Dustless alone crushed Hueco Mundo. What kind of strength was this? It was a question whether the captain could do it. After all, he was old, and compared to the young and strong Dustless, he was much weaker. Moreover, the thing that was most impossible to overlook was that at this moment, Dustless was still sealed on the stone chair, and the strength he revealed now was far from his prime. This bastard, Eisen Soak's expression became uglier and uglier, and he held a blue pearl in his hand, the Hogyoku. The Hogyoku was forcibly taken away, but not only did his strength not weaken, he became stronger. Eisen Soak gritted his teeth so hard that they were about to break, and dense lines of blood appeared on his face. Ever since he met Dustless, his life of bad luck had begun. Now, the strength he obtained after hundreds of years of hard work was less than the tip of the iceberg. How would he accept this? "He's too dangerous. We should seal his eyes as well," Sajin said, looking at the expressionless Dustless. He always felt that this guy was omnipotent, whether it was Jinjutsu, Taijutsu, Kendo, Kido, or Bakudo. Dustless's absolute strength made them feel ashamed. "You're right. We shouldn't have unsealed his eyes. I'm sure that he can defeat these invading greater voids without using his limbs or eyes. That vasto lord called Ulquiorra is a good example." This time, Shunsui agreed with Sajin. He thought it was no big deal to reveal one eye, but now it seems he was too naive. The Ryatsu in his body surged. Aizen's eyes focused on Dustless, and his thumb pointed to the sky. Boom, boom, boom. It has to be said that Aizen's Ryatsu was incredibly powerful. Ajuchas, who was close to him, was forced to kneel on one knee. Even Stark and Ulquiorra's faces changed. Just by using spiritual pressure, they couldn't resist. The so-called Vasto Lord was like a baby in swaddling clothes in front of Sok Aizen. Not worth mentioning. It's faintly, Sok Aizen began to chant, and every time he said a word, the sky would turn dark. This is a good opportunity. Staring at the fragments behind Ulquiorra and Stark, this distance was just enough for him to use that technique. Dustless's purple eyes widened, and he shouted, "Heavenly Hand, power!" Together with the sealed special stone chair. It appeared behind Ulquiorra and Stark in a strange manner in an instant. Aizen-sama is powerful. He can suppress us with spiritual pressure alone. Ulquiorra's respectful eyes were full of admiration and fanaticism, and even stupidly loyal. In his eyes, Sosuke Aizen was already a god. Yes, Aizen-sama is the guiding light sent by God to guide Hueco Mundo. The Minos Voids who suffered from Hogyoko Arcana were grateful to Aizen's change of heart. "Oh, then I'm sorry, your god is about to fall." Hearing this, the Minos Voids turned around and stared blankly at Dustless floating in the void. They all felt that their worldview had collapsed, and their IQ was not enough. This guy was clearly sealed, and he was even dragging a huge stone chair. However, he moved without making a sound. It was as if he was teleporting through space, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. This was simply blatant cheating. Dustless glanced at Sok Aizen and whispered, "Hado 90, Black Coffin." Space and time distorted, revealing the cold and dark depths of the universe. Black demonic light drilled out and almost instantly sealed Sok Aizen. Pucci, Pucci, Pucci. The sharp shadowless blade pierced through Aizen Sosuke's body, and even his bones were broken, making a crackling sound. Sok Aizen's body instantly hurt, and just like Dustless said, his body began to fall slowly, and he instantly lost the ability to fight. "Aizen-sama!" Sok Aizen's Arcana lackeys cried out and rushed towards Dustless with bloodshot eyes. These idiots have all been brainwashed. The so-called Vasto Lord's brain isn't that bright either. The group of Minos Voids who rushed towards Dustless, including Sok Aizen's confidant Ulquiorra, all pulled out their swords and coldly waved them at Dustless. This is a good opportunity. Take this opportunity to capture them all. Seeing this, Shunsui Jingle hurriedly gave out orders, which was completely different from his usual sloppy self. Chapter 1155. Everyone knew the saying, "Take advantage of your weakness." Shunsui Kiraku, who was as cunning as an old fox, seized this rare opportunity to attack Sosuke Aizen. A bunch of idiots. Dustless roared as he saw the group of Minos Grande charging at him. Boundless repulsive force spread out in all directions. Super Shinra Tensei. The destructive impact landed, and all life forms within a few kilometers received a fatal blow. The powerful Minos Grande were directly crushed into powder, and their ashes were scattered across the entire Soul Society. So strong, he is indeed the most abnormal. Shinozaki Ichigo said enviously with a rare hint of respect in his tone. Shinozaki Ichigo's gaze shifted to Sosuke Aizen, who was instantly killed. Shinozaki Ichigo's heart was filled with respect. At first, he thought that Rukia was just making things up, but now it seemed that it was true. Sosuke Aizen could instantly kill him, but Dustless could instantly kill him, killing a captain-level Shinigami with a snap of his fingers. Such strength was beyond Shinozaki Ichigo's understanding. If this kid knew that I was the one who killed his parents, I wonder if he would still be like this. Dustless muttered to himself as he looked at Shinozaki Ichigo from the corner of his eyes. Black void flash. The black afterglow from hell came from the front. The giant beam was extremely powerful, and the captains in Minos Grande who were in the way sensed the power of the flash and avoided it. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The black light passed through many figures, and after a long journey, it finally locked onto Dustless. Just in time. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes flashed. Not only did he not resist, but he also used his willpower to control his body and collided with the black light head-on. Boom, boom, boom. The power of the black light hit Dustless, and the power was enough to instantly kill a captain. The surrounding space was distorted, but the special stone chair floating in the air and Dustless were not hurt at all. What the hell is this thing made of? It's so sturdy. Dustless lowered his head and looked at the black bandages all over his body. He was rather surprised. Leaving aside the fact that it was completely fine after being directly hit by one strike cremation, now that it was hit by Black Void Flash, which was even more powerful than Wang Su's flash, it was still as good as new. It was not hard to tell how extraordinary the material used to construct this item was. Forget it. I'll let Team Zero's Isaiso Tong-sun and Shidoro Senjumaru undo it for me. Head Captain Yamamoto died in battle. It won't be long before they arrive at Soul Society. Dustless muttered to himself as he looked up at the sky. Your enemy is in front of you, not in the sky. It was Stark, the first of the 10 blades, who was pointing a gun at him. You want to challenge me? Come, don't hold back. Blast with all you might. It's best if you could destroy this damned thing used to seal me. Dustless puffed out his chest and motioned for Stark to aim. Stark's mouth twitched, and he pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang, bang, bang. A large number of void flashes blasted towards Dustless. Just like before, he floated in the sky motionlessly, looking forward to the incoming void flashes. Boom, boom, boom. Another series of explosions sounded. Dustless, who endured all the power of void flashes, was still unharmed. The black bandages on the surface of his skin were the best defensive armor. It could withstand any kind of attack. That's it for today. Our goal has been achieved. Retreat back to Hueco Mundo immediately. Stark was ready to use all his strength to teach Dustless a lesson, but Aizen Sosuke suddenly gave the order to retreat. The group of Minos Voids could only watch the Broken Soul Society leave. Aizen Sosuke himself was extremely miserable. He felt pressure when he walked, and he needed both Higashi-sensei and Ikamaru-jin to support him. He was also out of breath. Dustless also landed on the ground. He raised his head to observe the Minos Voids who were gradually escaping into the darkness. He was indifferent. Are you kidding me? Are we just going to watch them leave when Soul Society is destroyed like this? Seeing all the captains stop, the young Nissan Dashiro was unwilling to give up. I can understand your feelings, but we were almost wiped out when Soul Society had the advantage. If they chase us to Hueco Mundo, I'm afraid Aizen Sosuke won't need to do it himself. The waves of Minos Voids are enough to destroy us. Shunsuke sighed. He was also unwilling to give up. It doesn't matter if you chase them or not. Captain Shunsuke, please fulfill the agreement we made in Avicii Hell. After ensuring the safety of Soul Society, remove the seal on my body. Shunsuke's lazy words made all the captains look at him in disbelief. They didn't expect him to have such an agreement with Dustless. No, this guy is too dangerous. Sakura Seizen's eyes glowed with determination. He stood up and objected. Everyone. At this time, 2 figures descended from the sky. The captains of Godai 13 drew their swords again. It was Forfing Dojo's Ichi and Urahara Kisuk. Captain Urahara and Forfing Dojo's captains were framed. Don't worry about your Zanpakuto. Seeing this scene, Shunsuke quickly explained. Aizen personally admitted that he framed Urahara Kisuk and the captains 110 years ago. The two of you really know how to choose the right time. Wu-chan turned his face away and said coldly. According to the secret agreement between Dustless and Urahara Kisuk, the seal on his body should have been removed a long time ago. Who would have thought that he would delay until now? It was obviously intentional. Despicable, I was unknowingly tricked by him. I'm afraid Urahara Kisuk already guessed that Soul Society would be destroyed, so he deliberately delayed my release and pushed me and Soul Society into the same boat. Dustless rolled his eyes and understood Urahara Kisuk's intention. Chapter 11:56. Urahara Kisuk had expected Dustless to say this, so he took out a fan and covered half of his face. My memory isn't very good. I'm forgetful. Sorry. Urahara Kisuk scratched his head awkwardly with an innocent expression. Hearing this, Dustless was too lazy to argue with him. This kind of shameless person was the most shameless. There was no need to be angry with him. What's more, Dustless also got some real benefits. At least this guy will support him to be the head captain. And the most exciting thing was that Dustless took Yamamoto's Zanpakuto ability, Ryujin Jaka. Captain Jing Lu, don't you want to sign the treaty? I can help you expel Sosuke Aizen. And I can also transform into Sosuke Aizen and take over Sosuke Aizen's unfinished work, destroying Soul Society. Dustless threatened in an unfriendly tone, at the same time releasing a bone-chilling spiritual pressure. Are you threatening us? Keiki Byakuya and the other captains frowned with murderous intent. This isn't threatening, it's urging. Ignoring their murderous intent, Dustless continued. There's no such thing as a free lunch. I advise you to think about the consequences of your actions. I'm the one who helped you resist Sosuke Aizen and turn the situation around. Sosuke Aizen will continue to attack Soul Society in the future. The head captain is dead, and more than 70% of Soul Society's Shinigami are dead. Other than cooperating with me, what else do you have to face Sosuke Aizen? The group of team leaders blushed and stared at Wuchun. They were choked and wanted to refute, but they couldn't refute. They had all seen Sosuke Aizen's Kyoka, Suigetsu. Once they fought, their chance of winning was 0. In addition, Sosuke Aizen controlled Hueco Mundo and could mobilize thousands of Minos Grande to attack Soul Society at any time. Just like just now, let alone voids like Vasto Lord and Ajuchas, even thousands of Jillians were enough to give Soul Society a headache. Even the lowest level Jillian would require a Shinigami with Shurkai to deal with. Everyone, with all due respect, the head captain is dead, and the dead can't be revived. We must choose a new head captain to deal with the crisis brought by Sosuke Aizen. With a strange luster in his eyes, Kisuk Urahara stared at Dustless and finally suggested, I recommend Dustless as the head captain. I strongly disagree. Me too. A prisoner as the head captain? What a disgrace. As soon as Urahara Kisuk finished speaking, Sajin, Higashi Shiro, Kachiki Byakuya, and Soifon all firmly opposed Urahara Kisuk's proposal. Head captains is a head captain. Wuchun leisurely closed his eyes to rest, as if everything had nothing to do with him. Shunsui Kaiokura, Uno Hanaretsu, and Jushri Yukite did not say anything. Zaraki Kinpachi did not say anything either. It had nothing to do with him who became the captain. Mayuri was even more distracted as he looked at the corpses of Minos Grande. Are there no other candidates? Shunsui asked. Although he didn't object, it wasn't hard to see from his frown that he didn't want Dustless to be the head captain. Of course, there are other candidates. Kisuk Urahara smiled and said seriously, but who has the confidence to fight Sosuke Aizen? Hearing this, all the captains were silent. They weren't afraid of Sosuke Aizen, but Kyoka Suigetsu's ability was a headache. There are only 2 paths for you now. Either cooperate with me and let me be the head captain to deal with Aizen, or wait for Sosuke Aizen to destroy all the Shinigami. Think about which is more important. Dustless suddenly interrupted. The head captain was the spiritual pillar of all the Shinigami, known as the strongest Shinigami, but now that he's dead, these captains have lost their backbone. Suddenly, Dustless remembered something important. He continued to attack these arrogant captains and said, a long time ago, Sosuke Aizen took the Hogyoku from me. After fusing with it, his strength will increase exponentially. He'll be infinitely close to my original strength. These words immediately broke the captain's mental defenses. Dustless's strength when he fused with the Hogyoku was still unforgettable. The so-called head captain can kill one person with 1 slash. In other words, we don't have a choice. Apart from making him the head captain, there's no other choice? Shunsui asked with a complicated expression. Indeed, only Dustless can compete with Sosuke Aizen, or even suppress him. After all, everyone is familiar with head captain Dustless's strength. Kyoka Suigetsu's ability is useless against him. Kisuke Urahara nodded. This time, even Seizen, who disliked Dustless the most, was silent. It was clear who was more important. If they didn't cooperate with Dustless, Soul Society would be destroyed. If they cooperated with Dustless, it would be a matter of the future. They had to compromise even if they didn't want to. Otherwise, Soul Society would most likely be destroyed. They had no choice. While everyone was deep in thought, Dustless gave Uno Hanaretsu a look. The latter smiled and nodded, then said, Soul Society has no choice but to cooperate with Dustless. Therefore, I am willing to recommend him to be the head captain. Kisuke Urahara and Yi of the Four Maple Court looked at each other and nodded. For such an important matter, it doesn't seem right for Soul Society to look down on a Squad Zero. Just as everyone was about to compromise, a bald man Dustless hated jumped out and ruined his plan. Squad Zero had to show up at such an important time. There must be a problem. Chapter 1157. Dustless frowned. He didn't have a good impression of Team Zero. This group of people was worse than Old Man Yamamoto. For the so-called Soul King's safety, these people could sacrifice everything. His sight fell on the graceful Shotaro, Senju Maru, and Seo Tongsai. Wuchen only had a good impression of them. He teased them out of boredom. Don't tell me you miss me. Senju Maru and Captain Seo. Hearing this, Senju Maru raised her eyebrows and couldn't help but roll her eyes at Wuchen. She said coldly, If you're talking nonsense, I don't mind digging out your only exposed eye. What do you think? Stop him from being the captain? Or agree? After all, you are Team Zero, the real boss of Soul Society. Shunsui put the ball in Team Zero's court and gave them full authority to make the decision. We have no objection. Urahara Kisuke is right. You're the only one in Soul Society who can resist Aizen Sosuke. A soldier from the War Master's Division expressed his agreement. Suddenly, a sly smile appeared on his face. However, just in case, we need to leave something in your body. If you turn against us, it will be a way to protect yourself. This bald monk looks honest and upright, but in fact he is the most despicable person in Team Zero. Dustless raised his eyebrows and said indifferently, Something like a seal? You suppressed all my strength. How can I compete with Aizen Sosuke? He took the Hogyoku. Now, there were only two people in Soul Society who could compete with Aizen Sosuke. One was Dustless, and the other was Ichigo Shinozaki. Ichigo Shinozaki was killed by Aizen Sosuke, but Dustless killed Aizen Sosuke, so no one was optimistic about Ichigo's chances. And he was just a traveler. Of course not. In order to deal with you, we have developed a lot of things. You should be proud that Team Zero worked so hard for one person. Your body will be implanted with a special seal by me and the Thousand Hand Pill. It won't have any special effect on your strength, but it will seep into every cell in your body. If you betray Soul Society, I will detonate the seal in your body, and all the cells in your body will be dismembered instantly. I see. Dustless came to a realization. His gaze landed on Elder Wei's face as he said softly, So, you're implanting a time bomb in my body? All the captains frowned, thinking that Team Zero had gone too far. This was equivalent to selling themselves to Team Zero. If they didn't obey, their lives would be in danger. Everyone's eyes fell on Dustless, thinking that he would refuse. No problem, I promise you. Dustless smiled and said something shocking. Are you sure you thought it through? Uno Hanaretsu approached Dustless and tried to dissuade him. Her phoenix eyes stared at Shudor 1000-Hand Pill and Seo Toshio. That special seal sounded like a trick, but with their abilities, it wasn't difficult to create it. Dustless was gambling with his life. It's okay. Staying in the abyss is very uncomfortable. Dustless said fearlessly, I'm idiot. You think that kind of thing can restrict me? Even if I'm blown to pieces and my body turns to ashes, I can still be reborn. Dustless was expressionless. but he was sneering in his heart. After all, the ten-tailed beast's identity was there. He could still be reborn. In the room, there were only 3 people standing: Seo, Toshio, Shudor 1,000-Hand Pill, and Dustless. "Are you going to take off my clothes again?" Dustless looked at the 2 girls and asked with a smile. "Remove the words again and again," Seo Toshio said with a straight face. Shudor Sinjamaru did not mind at all. He appeared to be very indifferent. When he was making the Death Tyrant outfit for Wuchen, he had seen him naked. "Cut the crap. Hurry up and take off these black bandages," Dustless said impatiently. He was impressed by the black technology of Team Zero. He used 96 Hado and took the initiative to attack with Void Flash, but he still couldn't destroy these seals. Shuro Sinjamaru nodded and leaned close to Wuchun to remove the seal for him. Because the distance was too close and she was half squatting, Wuchun could even see her breasts with his sharp eyes. "Do you believe that I won't gouge your eyes out? I think this is the 2nd time I've said this." Shudor 1,000-Hand Pill frowned and said, "Unfortunately, you don't have the ability to do it." Layers of black bandages fell to the ground. Dustless stood up and stretched his body. After a pleasant stretch, he suddenly noticed the abnormality in his body and asked curiously, "What did you do to my body?" Dustless was shocked to find that there were countless starlight in his body, filling all the cells in his body. "If you dare to mess around, your body will explode in an instant," Shudor 1,000-Hand Pill warned fiercely. Her face was cold. Obviously, she wasn't joking. "Of course I won't mess around. My loyalty to Soul Society can be witnessed by heaven and earth," Dustless promised solemnly, but he was laughing in his heart. "After I use Hogyoku to devour the Spirit King, everything will change. It's not late. It's time to go for the captain handover ceremony," Seo Toshio reminded. Dustless was about to become the captain of Soul Society, leading Soul Society's Shinigami and Aizen Sosuke to fight. The captains of Soul Society had mixed feelings. This was a misfortune and a blessing. There was no doubt that Dustless's strength was above Aizen Sosuke, but the tragedy was that the new captain still had ulterior motives. In short, Dustless and Soul Society were now tied together. Chapter 1158. Time flew, and 3 days later, Dustless took over Yamamoto's 1st Division, becoming the 2nd head captain in history. After Aizen Sosuke's attack, Soul Society suffered heavy losses. All the members of the 1st Division were killed, including the captain and vice captain. Not only the 1st Division, but the Guiding 13 Division also suffered heavy losses. Every division suffered heavy losses. At this moment, the former head captain Yamamoto's seat was replaced by Dustless. Dustless's captain's Haori also had the word "first" on it. Ahem. Seeing the heavy atmosphere, everyone was silent, as if they were still immersed in the sadness of the death of the head captain. Dustless had to stand up and make his presence known. "The dead are gone. My condolences. The most important thing now is to discuss how to deal with the crisis brought by Aizen Sosuke. Immediately send troops to fight Aizen Sosuke and avenge Jinryusai-sama." Sajin, who respected Yamamoto the most, said with a sad face. His eyes were red, and even his voice sounded like he was about to cry. "If this big bear knows that I took Yamamoto's Zanpakuto ability and caused his death, he will definitely want to cut me into pieces." Seeing this, Dustless couldn't help but think, but he immediately shook his head and said, "Soul Society has been hit hard by Hueco Mundo, and now we can't attack Hueco Mundo. Let's just rest for a while. It took me a while to fuse with the Hogyoku. Aizen Sosuke will take longer than me. Then, we should turn a deaf ear to the hatred of the head captain. This is unfair to his soul in heaven. I strongly oppose it." Sajin was extremely stubborn. "Is this idiot's brain broken?" Seeing this, Dustless frowned and was a little dissatisfied. Soul Society's combat power was completely lost, including Sajin, who was seriously injured and was now wrapped in bandages. Not only him, but the other captains were also wrapped in bandages. It's indeed not the right time for revenge, and we don't have the ability to do so. Shunsui also frowned and objected. We don't have the strength to fight back, and everyone is injured. Sakura's Rajan was stunned when he heard that. His wound suddenly hurt, and he grimaced in pain. Even though he was unhappy, he could only suppress the unwillingness in his heart. Captain Ye, how is the investigation going? After a while, Dustless looked at Mayuri and explained, Everyone, according to the current situation, Aizen's goal is to kill the Spirit King, but to reach the Spirit King Palace, we must use the King's Sword. Then, let's have Captain Ye tell us how to make the King's Sword. Captain Ye nodded and raised his voice. Wang Jian's creation requires 100,000 souls, as well as a heavy spiritual land with a radius of 1 spiritual land. The so-called heavy spiritual land refers to a special spot that has spirituality in the modern world. The place will move together with the era, and it is the easiest place to gather spiritual things and have spirituality in the modern world. In other words, Kongzucho in the modern world. After these words were spoken, all of the captains fell silent. Only one voice exploded. Kongzucho, that's the city where I live. Shinozaki Ichigo, who was silent, was shocked. He clenched his fists as he thought of Aizen Sosuke's overwhelming strength. He was in despair. Shinozaki Ichigo, looking at him with interest, Dustless said, After Soul Society suffered a heavy blow, there is a serious shortage of manpower. From now on, you're the acting Shinigami, responsible for cleaning up the Daishu in Kongzucho. After that, Dustless gave Yukitake Jushuru a look. The latter nodded and gave Shinozaki Ichigo a Shinigami symbol. No problem. Shinozaki Ichigo straightened his waist and promised. Although he hasn't been a Shinigami for long, he gradually liked this profession, and he needed the absolute power to protect his family. This kid, if he knows that I'm the one who killed his parents, what will he think? Dustless had a strange expression on his face. He saw Shinozaki Ichigo's unwillingness in the underworld. Idiot, do you think you can stop Sosuke Aizen? You think too highly of yourself. Dustless sneered. Shinozaki Ichigo was too weak compared to Aizen. Aizen killed Shinozaki Ichigo before he could devour the Hogyoku. After fusing with the Hogyoku, his strength would naturally increase. But you idiots don't seem to understand what I mean. Looking at the Shinigami captains, Dustless smiled but didn't say anything. He wanted Aizen to fight his way to Soul King Palace. Soul King Palace was in a special space, and only Wang Jian could enter. As the head captain, Dustless didn't have time to be Wang Jian. I can use this chance to sneak into the Spirit King Palace, while Sosuke Aizen creates Wang Jian. Dustless smiled. It was best that Aizen was willing to create Wang Jian. Wang Jian was the only way to enter Soul King Palace. Dustless didn't have a way to enter Soul King Palace, so he wanted Aizen to create Wang Jian. Ahem. Everyone silence. Dustless calmed down and said seriously, The current crisis is to rebuild Soul Society and Soul Society. Shinozaki Ichigo will take care of Kongzucho for the time being. Dustless made the final decision. After thinking for a while, he said valiantly, For the future of Soul Society, we can only fight Aizen Sosuke to the death. As long as we are united, we can do anything. We are invincible. Soul Society's enemies will be trampled. Chapter 1159. These words had the captains running around in circles. They were all impassioned, their blood boiling as they walked out of the haze of their captain's death. The dead were gone, and the living had to face the future better. Although we've gathered our forces and are planning to evacuate Kazucho, we must at least monitor the situation, Dustless added. No problem. This is very easy. Mayuri was full of confidence. His tone was very certain. It was just a trivial matter. Dustless nodded, looked around, and continued. Is there anything else you want to say? If not, today's meeting will end here. Central Room 46 has been completely destroyed. It needs to be reorganized, Kachiki Byakuya suddenly said. I object. I also object. Those guys are simply vermin. Speaking of Central Room 46 makes me angry. Without this organization, Aizen Sanosuke's Kyoka Sujetsu would not have been able to achieve such a great effect. We must not reorganize. Kachiki Byakuya's words were like stepping on a landmine, and the atmosphere instantly exploded. Everyone was disgusted with Central Room 46. Aizen Sanosuke's success was largely due to Central Room 46's authority. This organization was superfluous, and Soul Society did not need it. It could even be said that Central Room 46 was the main culprit. Whether it was the previous matter of dealing with the captains or Aizen Sanosuke's schemes, Central Room 46 was involved. Seeing this, Kachiki Byakuya opened his mouth, but in the end, he chose to remain silent. The captains were all disgusted, and he was the only one who agreed to reorganize Central Room 46. Seeing Kachiki Byakuya's silence, Dustless chuckled and fell silent. Shouldn't we recall the expeditionary army from Hueco Mundo? Shunsui turned to Dustless and asked. Aizen Sanosuke had already become the king of Hueco Mundo, and the expeditionary army would be annihilated sooner or later if they remained. It was better to take this opportunity to recall them and strengthen Soul Society. Then recall them. Dustless ordered, but he was puzzled. The expeditionary army had wandered Hueco Mundo for so many years, and it was a miracle that Aizen Sanosuke was still alive after returning to Hueco Mundo. Head Captain, you seem to have forgotten something. A pleasant voice sounded out. Looking towards the source, it was Uno Hanalai. What is it? Dustless looked directly at Uno Waretsu's face and said, You're not talking about summoning those masks from the modern world, are you? Even though they received the void form, they were once a part of Soul Society. Uno Walai was very clear about her grudges and said, Not to mention, Soul Society was in the wrong in the first place. If we call them back, we'll be able to fill in the missing captain's position. That's a good plan, but I'm afraid they won't appreciate it. Dustless muttered, but he still said, Anyway, send someone to the modern realm to invite them. It's best if they agree, but don't force them if they refuse. All the captains agreed, as this was the most appropriate method. Now that Sosuke Aizen had completely fallen out with him, it would only make things worse if he went to war with the Legion. Not to mention that Soul Society was the one in the wrong from the start, and the Masked Legion was the one in the wrong. After a few more innocuous questions were asked, the captain's meeting came to an end. There were only a few figures left in the huge team room. Shinozaki Ichigo, do you have anything else? In the first team room, all the captains went back to their own places. Only Shinozaki Ichigo stood there motionless. He didn't speak, nor did he answer Dustless's question. This kid. Dustless stared at the embarrassed Shinozaki Ichigo, who was holding his Zanpakuto tightly with a face full of unwillingness. Seeing this scene, he guessed something and joked, Don't tell me you want me to train you? Hearing this, Shinozaki Ichigo was startled. He looked at him strangely, then admitted, That's right, I hope head captain can train me. My mother and father were killed. I must have enough strength to protect my sister and bring the criminal to justice. I must make him pay with his blood. Shinozaki Ichigo clenched his fist and said unwillingly. When he mentioned the criminal, he gritted his teeth, and his face was filled with a rare madness. Dustless felt uncomfortable. After all, Shinozaki Ichigo was talking about him as his enemy. I don't have time to train you, and I don't know how to train you. The only way I can tell you is to stop talking nonsense and focus on fighting. Train an enemy to kill him? Only an idiot would do that. However, Shinozaki Ichigo didn't give up and insisted. Head captain, you only need to fight with me. I can only improve if I find a suitable opponent. A suitable opponent? Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with contempt. Shinozaki Ichigo was as small as a grain of sand to him. Go find Zaraki. I believe he will be willing to fight with you. As Soul Society's Kenba, I've already fought with him, and I won by half. Shinozaki Ichigo said loudly with a touch of arrogance. Dustless saw this and thought, This kid seems to be arrogant just because he won against the captain. He didn't have time to mess around with Shinozaki Ichigo, so he continued, Then you should go to the modern world. I believe Aizen Sosuke will send someone to investigate the situation in the modern world. Waving his hand, Dustless was about to leave, but Shinozuki Ichigo didn't know what was good for him. His next move angered Dustless. Chapter 1160. Kurosaki Ichigo decisively pulled out his giant Zanpakuto and blocked in front of Dustless, blocking his way. His face was full of determination, as if he wouldn't give up until he achieved his goal. Kurosaki Ichigo, you're playing with fire. I'm the captain of the Soul Society. What you're doing is equivalent to declaring war on the entire Soul Society, Wu Chan said with an unfriendly expression and a warning tone. However, Kurosaki Ichigo didn't appreciate it. His tone was firm and without any regret. He said, "Head Captain, please teach me. I will do my best to boom, boom, boom." Before he finished his words, a tyrannical impact sent Kurosaki Ichigo flying. He was like a willow branch that wasn't worth mentioning. Dustless didn't even make a move. He could only go with the flow, unable to resist. Crack, crack, crack. The wall of the First Division exploded in the blink of an eye, and Kurosaki Ichigo collapsed into it. He didn't make a move? Kurosaki Ichigo was dumbfounded. His tone was more or less earth-shattering. He felt a huge sense of frustration that he had never felt before. The gap between us is so big. With your strength, it's impossible to catch up to my shadow, let alone train you. So you should give up. Dustless, who was standing with his hands behind his back, said indifferently. His light tone mocked him for overestimating himself. Can't catch up to your body? That's not necessarily true. With a stern expression, Kurosaki Ichigo crossed through layers of space and appeared in front of Dustless in almost an instant. His thick hand grabbed towards Dustless's face. Seeing this, Dustless didn't dodge. 6 huge light belts attacked from all directions, and the corner of his mouth whispered, "Bakudo number 61, Rokudo Light Prison." The light directly gathered, and Kurosaki Ichigo's movement was instantly stopped. Bakudo? After being a Shinigami for a few months, Kurosaki Ichigo wasn't ignorant. He said calmly, "Kurosaki Byakuya used this when he went to the modern world to capture Rukia. It's useless against me. I won't fall for the same trick twice." He gritted his teeth and tried to tear the 6-staff light prison apart. However, the effect was negligible. Even after twisting for a long time, the 6-staff light prison showed no signs of loosening. On the other hand, Shinozaki Ichigo's face was red and he was panting heavily. How is this possible? It's the same move. Why can I break through Byakuya's Bindao, but not this guy's Bindao? Shinozaki Ichigo muttered to himself in shock. The reason is very simple. Dustless looked at Shinozaki Ichigo, who was struggling, and said calmly, "Because I am the captain, and Kachiki Byakuya is only the captain of the 6th Division. The reason is so simple. Even though they were both captains, Dustless wasn't someone Kurosaki Byakuya could compare to. It was the same in all aspects." Dustless had reached the peak of the Shinigami's ghost-slaying walking combat. Kurosaki Byakuya was naturally inferior to him. There was a huge difference between the two of them. Shinozaki Ichigo's face was extremely ugly. He looked at Dustless, who was so close to him, but he couldn't reach him. Let go. The difference is too great. The so-called training is too much. It's just a one-sided crush. Dustless mercilessly crushed Shinozaki Ichigo's self-esteem. He thought that this kid would give up, but he continued to release Ryatsu from his body. No, this kid isn't talking about training. He just wants to test the difference between us. Seeing through Shinozaki Ichigo's intention, Dustless's eyes flashed. Aizen Shinosuke planned to hurt Kurosaki Rukia and his companion. He probably wanted to use Dustless to measure the difference between him and Aizen Shinosuke. Shinozaki Ichigo's body released a huge amount of Ryatsu, and his appearance changed dramatically. Bankai, Skylock Moonslash, Zanpakuto shrunk a few times and turned into a straight Tachi. The blade was dark and long, and it was very elegant. It reflected Shinozaki Ichigo's resolute face. If I don't teach this kid a lesson, he won't know how strong he is. Dustless's expression was cold, and he immediately responded fiercely. Some people only know how strong they are when they are beaten up. Kakaka. After Bankai, Shinozaki Ichigo's strength increased. The 6 light belts formed by the Rokurosaki Light Prison were already showing signs of damage. Boom, boom, boom. Shinozaki Ichigo used his Ryatsu, and the light disappeared. He looked at Dustless with his sharp eyes, and his momentum reached the limit. He was like a ferocious wolf rushing at him. Soul Society didn't expect you to deal with Aizen Shinosuke, and the future of Soul Society won't be in the hands of an outsider like you, Shinozaki Ichigo. No one gave him the task of dealing with Aizen Shinosuke. As a human, it was difficult for him to kill Aizen, especially after secretly killing his parents. Dustless felt very uncomfortable with this kid appearing in front of him every day. Shoo shoo shoo. Looking up, the cold Zanpakuto fell from the sky, and the sharpness was enough to hurt people's eyes. Clang, clang, clang. The sharpness hit Dustless's left shoulder. Shinozaki Ichigo was shocked, and he didn't hold back at all. He used all his strength, and he thought that he could seriously injure Dustless, but the reality was different from what he imagined. The moment the Zanpakuto fell on Dustless's body, the huge force bounced Shinozaki Ichigo away. Clang! Kurosaki Ichigo's arm was numb and trembling. He couldn't even hold onto his Zanpakuto, and it fell to the ground. It was clearly a human body, but it gave him the illusion that he was cutting something hard like a meteorite or a diamond. Chapter 1161. Kurosaki Ichigo was shocked. He didn't expect Wu Chun to be so strong. Not only did he kill the team leader with a raise of his hand, but his body was also as hard as steel. No attack could cause any substantial damage to him. Staring at Dustless's calm expression, Shinozaki Ichigo suddenly had this illusion. His full-strength attack, just now, was like a tickle to Dustless. It didn't hurt or itch, as if nothing happened. Now do you know the difference between us? One is in the sky, and the other is on the ground. The sky and the ground will never be on the same level. This sentence was like a thunderbolt that instantly hit Shinozaki Ichigo. He felt worse than death. His eyes were blank, and his hands holding the Zanpakuto were sweating. The powerless voice entered every corner of his mind and stimulated Shinozaki Ichigo's nerves. Hee, leave it to me, Ichigo. I will help you tear apart the bastard who looked down on you. A cold, hoarse, and arrogant voice suddenly appeared in his mind. It was very arrogant and arrogant. Everyone was not worth mentioning to it. Ichigo, who was in a daze, nodded uncontrollably, and then a strange white mask appeared on his face. At the same time, the temperature around him dropped rapidly. It was cold and piercing to the bone. It was as if he was stripped naked and thrown into the Antarctic continent. Roar! The unique howl of a wild beast spread out, and those who heard it trembled all over, their hair standing on end. This Ryatsu seems to be. Carefully feeling the subtle changes in Ryatsu, Dustless's frozen face relaxed a little. Roar! Seeing Dustless's expression relaxed, Shinozaki Ichigo's first thought was that Dustless was afraid. He instantly restrained his consciousness of resistance and completely released the hidden killer in his body. It really is you. Staring at the white mask on Shinozaki Ichigo's face, Dustless secretly despised him. Using a cheat when you can't beat me. This is really similar to Shinozaki Ichigo's style. It's you. Seeing Dustless, Shinozaki Ichigo was surprised. At this moment, his consciousness was completely taken over by the great void in his body. Now, the person who was talking to Dustless was definitely the void in his body. How rare. The monster created by Sosuke Aizen is only average in strength, but your memory is not bad. I destroyed your soul a few years ago. I didn't expect you to recognize me after being transferred into Shinozaki Ichigo's body. Dustless had a smile in his eyes. The violent wind blew against him, and his black hair danced in the wind. The expression of the great void hidden in Kurosaki Ichigo's body, which was white void, changed. His spiritual pressure became even denser, causing the ground to shake. Back then, Void White was easily killed by Dustless, but his spiritual pressure did not disappear. Because he had bitten Shinozaki Ishin, the power of the two merged into one. Now, it was inevitable that he would inherit it to Shinozaki Ichigo. "I want you dead." The illusory Ichigo roared, and flames soared into the sky. The new and old grudges were stacked on top of each other, and his strength continued to rise. The Zanpakuto swept out, and a wisp of black sword pressure swept out. Gitsuga Tensho. The moment the blade rushed out, the weak light instantly became several times stronger and swallowed Dustless with the momentum of a whale. The edge of the slash was powerful enough to destroy a mountain. It was like a giant abyss that could not be seen, and it would be annihilated if it touched it. It's not a big deal to use the illusory spiritual pressure. Opening his palm, Dustless directly rushed forward. Bang, bang, bang. The small hand that looked more delicate than a woman's skin was surprisingly strong. The black slash was directly caught by Dustless with one hand, and it could not be moved at all. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of friction came, and the provoked Gitsuga Tensho slammed into Dustless. Because of the strong force, dense sparks appeared in Dustless's palm. Final struggle. Glancing at the materialized slash in his hand, Dustless suddenly closed his 5 fingers, and then he exerted force. The roaring impact suddenly stopped, and the whole world returned to peace. Bang, bang, bang. The huge black slash collapsed and turned into streaks of black light that scattered in all directions. The scene was beautiful, and it looked like it was snowing. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A murderous cold light came from the left, and the killing intent was terrifying. Wherever the blade passed, a layer of cold ice would be formed. Don't release your killing intent when you ambush someone, idiot. He shook his head and sighed, and a dazzling golden light swept out. Laser. Puffed. The light beam went straight for Dustless, and when the blade of his Zanpakuto was about to penetrate Dustless's head, the great void mask that was hit by the golden light turned into countless particles. The blade also stopped, and it was only an inch away from Dustless's eyes. Bang! The great void mask was destroyed, and Shinozaki Ichigo also regained consciousness. However, he did not even have the strength to support his body, and could only lie on the ground admiring himself. His eyeballs were flashing with shock, and he was recalling the battle just now. Bang, bang, bang. There was a tremor in the corridor, and most of the Grim Reapers rushed over and surrounded Shinozaki Ichigo, and they all stared at him fiercely. How dare you attack the head captain? How dare you? A mere human. The members who rushed over said sternly, and their ferocious eyes could not wait to kill Shinozaki Ichigo. In the previous crisis, Dustless saved the entire Soul Society, and everyone was respectful to him, and they were very obedient. Soul Society has a heretic like you, and you dare to attack the head captain? You don't know your place. The Grim Reapers who rushed over rolled up their sleeves, as if they wanted to teach Shinozaki Ichigo a lesson. This is a misunderstanding. Dustless looked at Shinozaki Ichigo with pity, then closed his eyes and waved his hand. Send him to the 4th Division for treatment. Chapter 1162. The Grim Reapers who wanted to teach Ichigo a lesson all stopped. Their sleeves that were rolled up also fell back down. When they heard that Dustless was protecting Ichigo, they also gave up on the idea of beating him up. They unwillingly carried Ichigo to the 4th Division. How dare he attack the head captain? When he recovers, we will definitely cripple him. If it wasn't for the head captain, we would have been dead. This guy who doesn't know what's good for him was also there. If it wasn't for the head captain, he might have already died. Now that he knowingly broke the law, he will be punished even more. If the head captain didn't order us to send him to the 4th Division for treatment, I would have killed him with me. Chaotic and indignant curses echoed back and forth incessantly. In the end, all of it fell into Dustless's ears. This group of death gods seemed to have all been brainwashed. showing a kind of die-hard loyalty towards Dustless. They were no different from religious fanatics. "I'm just making use of you idiots." Sitting on the chair in boredom and looking up at the monotonous ceiling, Wu Chun smacked his lips. He was deeply speechless about this group of death gods. When they could use you, they would treat you as their own father. When they had no value, they would be the object of everyone's disdain and abuse. You have gained everyone's sympathy, and you are still complaining. You are too greedy. A pleasant voice entered his ears. Dustless purposely kept a straight face and looked towards the source of the voice. A beautiful figure walked over and said unhappily, "Breaking into the 4th Division without permission is a serious crime. You must be punished, Captain Uno Hanna. After becoming the head captain, your temper has become worse." Walking gracefully in front of Dustless, Uno Hanna Retsu laughed lightly and teased him. The alluring scent of her body entered his nostrils. Dustless suddenly became restless. He stared at Uno Hanna Retsu. The charm that she gave off was like a deadly poison. Even though he knew that this woman was a rose with thorns, Dustless couldn't help but want to touch her body. "Ouch, it hurts." A large hand suddenly appeared from the side and grabbed Uno Walleye, who was caught off guard, and pulled her into his embrace. His other hand slipped into her clothes. "Don't mess around. This is the 1st Division." Uno Walleye panicked, and her face turned red. At the same time, she looked around suspiciously, afraid that someone would come and disturb her. "Don't worry, my fanatical fans have all gone to your 4th Division. Now, there's not even a shadow in the 1st Division. Who would care about the two of us? What's more, I've always been open-minded. I don't care about the occasion." Dustless's eyes darted around, as if he was trying to find a spot to ambush Uno Walleye. "You." Uno Walleye's face turned red as she regretted her actions. Originally, she had only been joking with Dustless. Who would have thought that he would turn the act into reality? Uno Walleye, who had been caught off guard, could only let it go. How despicable! Uno Walleye, who couldn't win against Dustless, grumbled unhappily, "If you mess around, you'll only get my body but not my heart." "Who wants your heart? I only want your body." Dustless shrugged and said without a care. Uno Walleye was so angry that she almost fell over. She turned her head and glared at Dustless. The frivolous smile on his face was extremely annoying in Uno Walleye's eyes. She knew that Dustless was doing it on purpose. "What is it, Lai?" Stopping what he was doing, Dustless calmly hugged Uno Walleye. His mood changed in the blink of an eye, and his calm voice sounded very serious and confident. What an unfathomable guy. Uno Walleye calmed her thoughts and said bluntly, "I discovered Shinozuki Ichigo's companion, Inoue Oraheim. Her ability is very special and mysterious. If possible, I might be able to borrow her ability to remove the seal on your body." Dustless could not help but be stunned when he heard this. A strange look flashed in his eyes as he asked, "Lai, is this the only reason you came to find me?" Uno Walleye looked at Dustless strangely. A strange look appeared on her face as she asked, "Of course. After all, you're being threatened by Team Zero. Since I have chosen to stay on the same boat with you, I will sincerely help you." Dustless did not reply after she finished speaking. He only hugged Uno Walleye's waist even tighter. The two of them were almost glued together. "Lai, I'm sorry. It's my fault for making you worry. Don't worry. There's no seal in this world that can bind me. It's just the Zero Squad's wishful thinking to make me obedient. They're just too full of themselves." Dustless sincerely apologized and didn't try to hide anything from them. Uno Walleye could not help but frown when she heard this. A trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. Just as she was about to say something to dissuade him, Dustless's calm eyes were like a peerless medicine that soothed the worry in her heart. She did not know why, but she suddenly felt enlightened. "That's true." Uno Walleye nodded her head. Her worries also disappeared. As a person who was equivalent to a miracle, it was not strange for him to create a miracle. Dustless had been sealed before, but in the end, he still grew wings and flew away. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. I am undying and indestructible. They can't restrict me at all. Although her voice was very light and sounded more like a joke, Uno Walai's voice was very firm and gave off a feeling of confidence. What an exquisite spiritual pressure. At this moment, an extraordinary spiritual pressure quietly spread out and enveloped Soul Society like a breeze. The weak energy fluctuation was mixed in with the wind and waves. Even a captain-level Grim Reaper might not be able to detect it. Chapter 1163. There was no perfect move in this world. Although the Ryatsu was subtle, Dustless sensed it clearly. After all, he was strong enough. Who could it be? Lowering her head, Unohana Retsu was also very curious. She hugged herself and looked very cute. Let's go and see. As the captain, I should be the one to suppress the situation. Patting his chest, Dustless smiled proudly. He was very arrogant. Many people had thought about kicking Yamamoto out of the captain's position and replacing him, but no one could actually do it. You can go by yourself. There are still a lot of things waiting for me to deal with in the 4th Division. That Shinozaki Ichigo is probably the only one who can heal him. As the head captain, don't act like a child. Unohana Retsu complained. That brat overestimated himself. He wanted to use my strength to measure Aizen's strength. That's stupid. I'm already giving him face by not killing him. Dustless said disapprovingly. If it was in the past, Kurosaki Ichigo would have been dismembered. Overestimating himself and wanting to challenge others was a crime punishable by death. I'll leave first. I'll go and see who that brat is. In the sky above Soul Society, 2 figures stood. They barely knew each other. Hey. Ulquiorra, is that guy really as scary as you say? I feel that Aizen-sama is deliberately lying to us. He must be afraid that we will be careless when facing Soul Society, so he made up an enemy out of thin air. His purpose is to make us cautious. The muscular Azurite said with certainty. He blinked his eyes and looked like he was very smart. Ulquiorra just kept silent. He didn't even look at him. He deliberately released a weak Ryatsu to sweep across Soul Society. Only a few people felt Ulquiorra's Ryatsu. That guy is here. I will crush him and let him know how powerful I am. Shaking his giant fist, Yami was full of confidence. I don't believe that there is anyone in this world who can defeat Aizen-sama. The news of his defeat must be fabricated by those minions. Yumi, Ulquiorra could no longer bear the nagging of his teeth. He turned his head and said bluntly, "The group of minions you mentioned includes me, and you? Impossible. You are Vasto Lord. How could he be a lackey?" At the end of his sentence, Yumi's face was full of confusion. Then, a silly smile appeared on his face, as if he was joking with him. "Because I am one of the defeated minions. Of course, Sir Aizen is also included." Yasumi froze, sweating profusely. He looked around suspiciously, trying to see if Aizen Sosuke would suddenly come out and kill him. I was wondering why the spiritual pressure was so familiar. No wonder it was the 2 of you. In front of Yumi, light surged and condensed into Dustless's body. Carefully looking at Yumi and Ulquiorra, Dustless asked in puzzlement, "What are you doing in Soul Society? Are you here to die?" After saying that, Dustless released his killing intent. What's wrong with this bastard? How many people did he kill? Yumi roared in shock and anger. He instinctively looked at Ulquiorra and saw that his face was full of depression and fear. Even the depths of his green eyes were dotted with some unprecedented fear. Captain Haori is actually... Could it be that this guy is the strongest head captain? It shouldn't be. I remember someone said that the captain of Soul Society is an old man. Yumi said with a puzzled face. The way he looked at Dustless was also very strange. He couldn't feel his spiritual pressure. This person was small, his face was pale, and his first impression was that he was terminally ill. "Boy, who are you?" After thinking for a long time, Yumi still couldn't figure out, so he asked impatiently. His tone was irritated and tyrannical. His eyes were as big as a bronze bell, and he stared at Wu-chan. He raised his huge fist, as if he would kill Wu-chan immediately if he didn't give him a satisfactory answer. Pointing to his face, Dustless teased, "I advise you not to know who I am. Otherwise, you will feel uncomfortable. Just you? Hearing this, Yumi, who had a bad temper, was so angry that he laughed. His fist was suddenly covered with a layer of crimson brilliance. When he was about to punch, Ulquiorra's next move scared Yumi. He took a few steps forward and immediately bowed 90 degrees to Dustless. Dustless, Sama, Aizen, Sama has a message for you. Calling a reaper? Sama? Yumi suddenly felt his head spinning. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. When he was about to ask why, Yumi suddenly remembered a popular name in Hueco Mundo, Great Void Assassin. You shouldn't be the Great Void Assassin, right? I heard that many Arancars of 10 blades died in your hands. Even the former king of Hueco Mundo was killed by you. The look in Yumi's eyes clearly changed. He looked at Dustless as if he was a monster. He was no longer as arrogant as before. He even recalled Dustless's shocking battle record. His body uncontrollably retreated behind Ulquiorra. Great Void Assassin? That's a good name. Dustless nodded seriously. Although he didn't know which 10 blades were killed by Yumi, one thing was certain. He killed Ulquiorra. To be honest, this visit to Soul Society was actually entrusted by Aizen Sama. He hopes to cooperate with Dustless, Sama. Ulquiorra's expression was humble, and his tone was respectful. In a world where the strong were respected, there was no racial division. Chapter 1164. Dustless sized up the reserved Ulquiorra with great interest, and he couldn't help but laugh. Join forces? As if he heard the funniest joke in the world, Dustless curled his lips in disdain. Dragons don't mix with snakes. That kid is famous for being despicable and shameless. He must be up to no good. Wu Qin's blatant ridicule made Ulquiorra and Yumi's faces twitch unnaturally, but they could only endure it and not dare to flare up. Mocking Boss Aizen in front of them was really hateful. Aizen-sama is sincere. The course Yumi overcame the fear in his heart and looked at Dustless with a fanatical look. After unifying the world, we can laser. The golden light whizzed down with infinite power and was difficult to catch. What a fast speed! Yumi was shocked when he saw this. This light beam was only as thick as a thumb, but it gave him a very dangerous feeling. Considering the power of this light, Yumi decisively stepped back. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Ryatsu erupted under his feet. When he was about to step back, Yumi suddenly felt a sharp pain in his arm. He screamed in pain, and his face was as pale as snow. There was a chart hole on his right arm. It is undeniable that your speed is very fast, or rather, the speed of breaking a plane is very fast. But compared to me, you're still too young. Both Yumi and Ulquiorra's face changed slightly. You bastard. Just when Yumi couldn't bear it anymore and was about to erupt with Ryatsu, Ulquiorra stood in front of him. This was Soul Society, and if they fought, they would suffer. Aizen-sama is willing to join forces with you. After we succeed, we will join forces to divide the world equally. Ulquiorra changed his tone, and his tone was full of endless temptation. However, Dustless smiled disdainfully again. He flipped his hand and released a huge flash of light. Tao Breaker 88, Flying Dragon strikes Thief Sky, shaking Thunder Cannon. This guy doesn't know what's good for him. Staring at the thick flash of light that cut through the void, Ulquiorra's green eye sockets were burning with raging flames, even though he was a calm person. He and Yumi had lowered their posture and stature, but Dustless didn't have the slightest awareness of friendship. Instead, he started a fight because of a small disagreement. Ring turn. Aware of the flash of light, Yumi and Ulquiorra didn't dare to be careless. They avoided the light and turned to attack Dustless from two different directions. Clang! The Zanpakuto was unsheathed, and two rays of light, one red and one blue, attacked from the front and back. As expected of Aizen Sosuke's subordinates, you chose to kill him to silence him. This is very similar to Aizen's style of doing things. The only flaw is that you are far too weak compared to Sosuke Aizen. While Chakra was raging, Dustless didn't forget to ridicule the two and said contemptuously, "Your Aizen, Sama is actually just a clown who plays tricks." These words were like a blade that penetrated into the two's body, destroying their physical body and spirit. The two burst out with more powerful spiritual pressure fluctuations at the same time. "You two idiots are really naive. Even Sosuke is not my opponent, let alone the two of you. The narrow world of Hueco Mundo is your territory. On the world stage, the two of you are too weak." Energy fluctuations gushed out of the body, and transparent ripples spread. At the moment when Ulquiorra and Yumi were about to crush themselves, a transparent key shield suddenly formed. Shinra Tensei. The invisible ripples contracted and formed a hard sphere, forming a perfect 360-degree defense with no blind spots. "Let's deal with him together." Yumi and Ulquiorra looked at each other and quickly exchanged glances. Their spiritual pressure began to surge, and the strength of Zanpakuto in their hands gradually became deeper. Ka. Spiderweb-like cracks suddenly appeared on the key shield defense. As the two's strength increased endlessly, the cracks swallowed the entire sphere formed by Shinra Tensei. Bang, bang, bang. After a second, the defense circle exploded and shattered. The two Zanpakuto crossed and cut Dustless at the same time. After a lot of blood gushed out of his body, he fell powerlessly. "Tisk, it's just SOSO. I was looking forward to it." Yumi withdrew his spiritual pressure and said with disdain, "These days, there were too many people who didn't live up to their name." Seeing this, Ulquiorra was nervous, as if he was facing a great enemy. He looked around suspiciously, and Vasto Lord's detection ability was open to the limit. He had the honor of fighting with Dustless before and knew that he would never be obliterated so easily. This was equivalent to a Vasto Lord being killed by Jillian, which was absolutely impossible. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Sure enough, at this time, the sky was extremely dark, especially under Yumi and Ulquiorra's feet. It was extremely dark and was covered by the falling mahogany group. The me you killed was just a shadow clone. Glancing at the two who were in a daze, Dustless finally told the ruthless truth. "Immortal art, bright god gate." Boom, boom, boom. A large number of mahogany crushed the sky, and the darkness seemed to suppress the whole world. The rain of bullets mercilessly annihilated Ulquiorra. Enemy Dustless keenly noticed that the spiritual pressure of one of them disappeared instantly. Even after being hit by Bright Godgate, you can still barely stay alive. Although it's extremely embarrassing, it's still commendable. Looking at the group that was shattered into pieces on the ground, Dustless smiled and said, "The war hasn't broken out yet, but the so-called 10 Blades seems to be close to being wiped out." Chapter 1165. As for Ulquiorra, his luck was obviously better. Of course, it was related to his carefulness and his physical ability. Even if his limbs were crushed and destroyed by the power of Bright Godgate, he could still move freely and even regenerate them. As for Yumi, it was a tragedy. His huge body was directly smashed into pieces by the Rashomon Gate. The most frightening thing was that the Bright Godgate seemed to have an invisible mouth that sucked in his corpse. Even Ulquiorra, who was used to seeing storms and waves, changed his expression slightly when he saw this scene, and his expression became unnatural. Immortal art, seeing Dustless quickly make hand seals again, Ulquiorra suddenly realized that something was wrong. Remembering the things that Aizen gave him before, he immediately took out 2 photos and threw them to Dustless. 10,000 things heavens pull. Dustless frowned slightly, looking at the photos that deviated from their trajectory, and pulled them over with one hand. Immediately, he looked at the 2 lively girls in the photos, and his Ryatsu swept out uncontrollably from his palm, shattering the photos into pieces. "Aizen Sosuke threatened me?" Dustless asked indifferently. The way he looked at Ulquiorra also changed. If he was joking just now he was full of killing intent. The 2 girls in the photos were Candace and Bombietta. "I don't know about this. I was just following Aizen-sama's orders." Ulquiorra's injuries recovered, and his body that was crushed by Dustless was also restored. He casually opened his mouth and looked at Dustless deeply before leaving, as if he wanted to remember him forever. The indifference that would never change was forever imprinted in Ulquiorra's heart. "Hold on. Tell Aizen Sosuke for me." Glancing at Ulquiorra, Dustless said indifferently, "The biggest difference between a smart person and a fool is that he knows what to do and what not to do. If he does something that he shouldn't do, no matter how smart or cunning he is, only death is left for him." Hueco Mundo, in the desolate Lost No Chase Palace. Although Sosuke Aizen had safely escaped from Soul Society and ruled over Hueco Mundo, the fundamental changes in Hueco Mundo hadn't changed. In fact, after Sosuke Aizen took over, the fighting in Hueco Mundo became even more serious than before. After arriving at Hueco Mundo, Sosuke Aizen discovered a big problem. The 10 Blades plan that he had painstakingly researched had all been directly or indirectly destroyed by Dustless. More than half of the 10 Blade breaching members were killed by Dustless. This was a huge loss. Just thinking about it gave Aizen a severe headache. Inside the spacious palace. Bang, bang, bang. The aftermath of the destruction drifted from Aizen Sosuke's body, causing countless cracks to appear around Lost No Chase Temple. Aizen Sosuke stared at Ulquiorra below. A huge wave of majesty pressed down on him, making him unable to breathe. The great ethereal realm's souls were terrified. Looking at Aizen Sosuke, they couldn't help but bend down, their knees almost touching the ground. "Ulquiorra, is this what that person said?" Sosuke Aizen didn't move. His voice was still as gentle as before, but in fact, his veins were popping out all over his body. Being humiliated like this by Wu Chun was like being slapped 10 times in the face. His old face hurt. Aizen-sama, the #1 lackey, Ii-sensei, stood beside Sosuke Aizen and bowed his head. "After we leave Soul Society, Dustless will become the head captain." "Bastard!" Hearing this, Aizen Sosuke cursed and spat out a dense ryatsu from his mouth. The soldiers standing around him were directly crushed to dust by Aizen Sosuke. Killing Yamamoto is a cause for celebration, but who would have thought that in the end, it would benefit that kid? Is there no one in Soul Society who would choose a criminal to be the head captain? Sosuke Aizen felt very uncomfortable. For the first time, he knew what it felt like to lift a stone and smash it on his own foot. It was painful, it was aggrieved. He had a stomach full of bitterness, but he couldn't spit it out. He could only swallow it down. Killing Yamamoto was a cause for celebration, but getting a godlike opponent in exchange was very sad. In contrast, Sosuke Aizen suddenly felt that the head captain was too cute. Aizen-sama, attacking Soul King Palace requires a king key. Kongzucho is undoubtedly suitable, and the Shinigami have already evacuated there. Should we? Ii-sensei made a throat-slitting gesture, obviously suggesting that Sosuke Aizen take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to attack Kongzucho. There's no need to rush. We're not ready yet. Everything is still in progress. The 10 Blades were all destroyed by that man. I must continue to gather more troops to deal with Soul Society. Thinking of the 10 Blades that Dustless destroyed, Sosuke Aizen's face turned pale. Although they were just pawns, they were very useful to him now. It could even be said that it was a matter of life and death. Almost all of the original members of the 10 Blades were destroyed by Dustless. Sosuke Aizen had to come up with a new plan to deal with Soul Society. Chapter 1166. The scenery of Quiet Soul Courtyard was like spring all year round, beautiful beyond words, with hundreds of flowers blooming everywhere. Soul Society was full of vitality, showing signs of prosperity. Luanju, I told you to hit my back, not my neck, and with your strength, are you trying to kill me, or do you want to hit my back? Turning his head, Dustless looked at Matsumoto Luanju, who looked like she ate gunpowder, and said angrily, "Are you thinking about Ikamar Jin again?" Matsumoto Luanju was silent, Her beautiful eyes seemed to be covered with a thin veil, muddy and without light. Luanju Ne-san, Captain Ikamaru Jin has betrayed us. Hinamori pulled the corner of Matsumoto Luanju's clothes and reminded her. Yes, he is determined to follow Sosuke Aizen, standing on the opposite side of Soul Society. The next time we meet, I'm afraid we will be enemies. Rukia also sighed. His childhood friend had betrayed Soul Society and betrayed him. Anyone would be deeply affected. They have a point, Luanju. After Wu Chun took a sip of tea, he showed an expression of enjoyment. He immediately glanced at the absent-minded Matsumoto Ranjaku and waved his hand to surrender helplessly. If I meet him on the battlefield in the future, I will try to keep him alive. Hearing this, Matsumoto Ranjaku's face lit up with joy. While Wuchen was daydreaming on the couch, she pushed his head into her majestic mountain. Let go of me. Do you want to squeeze me to death? Dustless shouted as he struggled. When he recovered, his mouth twitched, and he angrily shouted at Matsumoto Luanju. What are you doing? Remember that I'm the captain now, not your... The voice at the edge of his mouth stopped abruptly. Suddenly realizing that his wording was wrong, Wu Chun hurriedly changed his words. He looked around and took the three women into his eyes. He said with emotion, At that time, I brought the three of you into the 7th Division, and now I put you into the 1st Division. Fate is really unpredictable. Dustless was barely related to Soul Society, and there were only 0 divisions Seo Toshio and Shudora Senjumaru, and the 4th Division's Uno Hanaretsu and Toru Sato. In addition, there were the 3 girls in front of him. Placing the 3 of them in the first team was actually a form of protection. Are they here? Squinting his eyes, Wu Chun, who was sleeping on the rocking chair, suddenly opened his eyes. A special figure had appeared in front of him, wearing a colorless kimono, holding a walking stick, and wearing a blue and white hat. Did they agree? Store manager Urahara? Wu Chun lazily asked as he leisurely swayed back and forth on the couch. You? Seeing this, Urahara Kisuk didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dustless was the only captain in Soul Society who was as casual and unruly as him. Even Zaraki Kenpachi knew what should be done and what shouldn't be done. Only Dustless was the most casual. As a captain, he didn't have the arrogance and style of a captain. Just as you thought, they did agree and are willing to send someone to fill the vacant captain position in Soul Society. Urahara Kisuk said seriously he was talking about the Masked Legion. Now, there are finally people to fill the vacant captain positions. Dustless yawned as he stretched his body. His eyes were wide open, giving people the illusion that he was about to fall asleep. Let's go see them. Inside the 1st Division's building, Dustless circled around the 3 people in front of him and said with dissatisfaction, The Masked Legion is far more than just the 3 of you. If I remember correctly, they invited all of you to come back to Soul Society. That's not necessary. They're already used to life in the modern world. Soul Society is not suitable for them. Hirako Shinko, the leader of the Meat Legion, said with a cautious tone. He didn't fully trust Dustless, this mysterious captain. What can I? Sarutobi Nishikori immediately stood up and questioned. Her whole body was like a barrel of gunpowder. She said in an extremely unfriendly tone, A gigolo like you can become a captain. Is there no one else in Soul Society? What did you say? Apologize to me immediately. Hinamori, who was standing behind Dustless, glared at her. Her Zanpakuto was already out of its scabbard. It seems that she hasn't let go of her complaints against me. Glancing at Sarutobi Nishikori, Dustless waved his hand to stop the tense situation and said, In that case, Captain Hirako will return to your previous 5th Division, just the 2 of you. Staring at Lisa and Sarutobi Nishikori, Dustless bowed his head and thought for a while before saying, The original captain of the 9th Division, Rokush Kunii, has died in battle. Now, Miss Lisa will be in charge. 110 years ago, these people were the death gods of captains or seats. Now, they all have Bankai, and all of them can turn into void, so they are fully qualified to be the captain. As for Sarutobi Nishikori, staring at the proud girl with a golden ponytail, Dustless couldn't think of a suitable position for her. The captain of the 3rd Division will be taken over by the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant from Hueco Mundo Expeditionary Force. Chapter 1167. Hearing this, Sarutobi was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. Her hair stood on end as she glared at Dustless. Her eyes were cold. I've been a vice captain since 110 years ago. Do you want me to be a vice captain again? No way. Sarutobi didn't even think about it. I suspect you're using this to avenge a personal grudge. Sarutobi had a grudge against Dustless. What are you talking about? Watch your tone. Hinamori, who was standing behind Dustless, couldn't hold back her anger and shouted, "Head captain taking you in is already a great favor. Don't forget that you were once wanted criminals in Soul Society. Who do you think saved you?" Hinamori's words made the room go silent. Even Sarutobi was stunned. This was an undeniable fact. After the annihilation of the Central Chamber 46, everything was temporarily handled by Wu Chun. All matters big and small were decided by him. It was also Dustless who gave the order to pardon the Masquerade Corps. You can live under the sun and come and go as you please. You can even stand here as a Shinigami. This is all because of head captain's wisdom. Hinamori said righteously. Why did I suddenly become Aizen? Wu Chun, who was sitting on the chair in silence, said with a smile. Then he looked at Asakiri Ri with expectation in his eyes. It seemed that he wanted to hear her rebuttal. Sarutobi was speechless. She thought for a long time, but couldn't come up with an excuse. Her face was red as she held her Zanpakuto in anger. Even Arako Masako and Lisa Yasamaru were silent and did not reply. The one who framed them was Sosuke Aizen, and now the one who pulled them back to heaven was Dustless. Then don't you mean we should be grateful to him? Sarutobi obviously thought of a countermeasure. Sarutobi sneered. The head captain you're talking about is just using our strength to deal with Aizen. After that, Sarutobi Riri looked at Wu Chun with bright eyes. Am I right, head captain? Hearing this, Dustless was indifferent. He glanced at the arrogant Sarutobi and said lightly, You have seen Aizen Sosuke Shirkai, Kyoka Sujetsu. You can't deal with him with your strength. You're not even as useful as Shinozaki Ichigo. Dustless added. Hearing this, the faces of the 3 members of the masked legion became gloomy. They clenched their fists and stared at Dustless with uncertain eyes. The hot-tempered Sarutobi rolled up her sleeves as if she was going to teach Dustless a lesson. This is the truth. Shinozaki Ichigo didn't see the release process of Kyoka Suijetsu. In addition, his strength is also good. He has the strength of a captain. Even if he's not as strong as Aizen, at least he won't be confused by Aizen's Zanpakuto. Dustless looked at Sarutobi calmly as he said, Are you looking down on us? Sarutobi snorted. That's not it. Wu Chun shook his head. His next sentence immediately ignited the flames in the world. He said, I'm just stating a fact that I saw. Then you're still looking down on me. Sarutobi walked in front of Dustless and almost smashed the table. She stared at Dustless's indifferent face and said, If you defeat me in 10 moves, I will admit defeat and accept your conditions. 10 moves? Dustless frowned. His lips moved, but he didn't say anything. He looked at Sarutobi quietly. Humph, don't look at me so pitifully. It's useless even if you beg me. But this is the price you have to pay for provoking me and looking down on me. Holding his hands in front of him, A Persimmon quietly looked at Wu Chun, but he also saw Wu Chun looking at him quietly. He said impatiently, Then I'll give you a chance of 30 moves. Really, you are definitely the weakest head captain. Don't tell me you got here through the back door. I think Sarutobi misunderstood. Dustless sighed and said lightly, I don't need 30 moves to deal with Sarutobi. You won't even need 1 move. It's too difficult for you to fight me. You will also lose. Everyone was petrified when they heard this. They looked at Dustless, who didn't change his expression. You bastard. How dare you? After a while, Sarutobi screamed in indignation. If I lose, you can do whatever you want with me. You can kill me or torture me as you wish, Wu Chun said indifferently. After saying that, Wu Chen's eyes had already begun to change. Three deep jade hooks flashed out of his eye sockets. They were very mysterious and powerful. If I lose, I will boom. Without waiting for Sarutobi to finish her words, Dustless's Sharingan glanced at her, and Sarutobi fell directly to the ground. She fainted and lost her ability to move. Everyone was stunned by this scene. They rubbed their eyes and thought that they were dreaming. Dustless didn't even move his hand. You dare to sneak attack me? Damn it, despicable. Sarutobi, who was lying on the ground, had an ugly expression on her face. She cursed Dustless for being shameless. Her eyes were burning with anger. She couldn't wait to pounce on Dustless and beat him up, but she had no strength to resist. I just don't want you to lose too badly. Dustless ignored Sarutobi's insults and said indifferently, "You will be one of the members of Soul Society's Godii 13 from now on. We will see each other all the time. There's no need to act like enemies." Chapter 1168. Rishiri gritted her teeth and glared at Wuchun. That unshakable and calm face was especially dazzling in her eyes. Rishiri was so angry that she trembled and desperately clenched her teeth to stabilize her body. "Your willpower is truly astonishing." His calm eyes widened a little, revealing a hint of surprise. Nishihara was sweating profusely as she stood up. Her eyes were red as she held her Zanpakuto and stared at Dustless's handsome face. "You want to kill me in one move? Dream on." Nishihara was gasping for breath. Even though she was on the verge of death, she was still holding on. "Although I deliberately suppress my power, she can still stand up. She's indeed not bad. She can be the leader." Wuchun nodded secretly and looked at the persevering Rishiri in surprise. "Is that so? That's still not enough." Dustless shook his head and continued, "If I send you to be the captain of the 3rd Division, I'm afraid it won't be long before the 3rd Division is removed from Soul Society." Hishihari-sen. "Why?" Hinamori blinked and asked curiously. "Even if Sosuke Aizen wants to attack Soul Society, the head captain will stop him." No, you misunderstood me. Sosuke Aizen is an external factor. I'm talking about internal factors." Dustless shook his head mysteriously. "Then what do you mean by internal factors?" Hirako Shinko asked. "You don't know?" Dustless said with a look of disdain. "Of course it's Hishihari-san. She's the biggest internal factor. If the 3rd Division is handed over to her, it will collapse. If Sosuke Aizen wants to destroy the 3rd Division, he'll need to send someone to do it. Hishihari-san won't even need to lift a finger to destroy the 3rd Division." Wuchun said seriously. His tone was unusually solemn. Puffed. Hinamori, Hirako Masako, and Lisa couldn't help but laugh out loud, and their necks were all red. Nishihara's personality wasn't suitable to be a captain. "I'm going to kill you, you bastard." The angry Rin Nishi descended from the sky with Zanpakuto, and the sharp edge slashed towards Wuchun's head. Rin Nishi was in a fit of anger, and the condensed power was enough to split Wuchun into two. There are a lot of naughty and disobedient kids these days. Wuchun had a headache and frowned. This apersimmon was obviously a problematic child in this world. Clang! Hinamori raised her eyebrows as she pulled out her Zanpakuto and stood in front of Dustless. The Zanpakuto clashed against each other. Hinamori was obviously not as strong as Ri, and she was forced to retreat again and again. She was obviously not Ri's opponent. "Head captain?" Just as Hinamori was about to fall, a pair of hands steadied her body. After a short moment of absent-mindedness, Hinamori turned around and saw Dustless. "You're so despicable, abusing your position as the captain." "I heard that when you just became the captain, you found 3 beautiful team members to join the first team." "No, it should be your personal guards." Rishiri exposed Wuchun's past without hesitation. "I don't have a vice captain in the 1st Division, so it's easy to find former members." Looking at your sour face, are you jealous? Dustless pursed his lips and smiled, teasing Nishihara. "You have a sharp tongue. I'm going to beat you up." His face was red. He was no match for Hinamori, so he had no choice but to move past Hinamori and slash his Zanpakuto towards Wu Chen's throat. The blade of the Zanpakuto flashed with a cold light as if it had not tasted blood for many years. Clang! Just as she was about to cut off Dustless's throat, she raised her left arm and grabbed the Zanpakuto. His skin was as hard as steel, and Nishihara couldn't hurt Dustless at all. "Stop it, Nishihara!" Hirako Shinko shouted with an irresistible command. After all, he was the leader of the masquerade army. You're lucky, kid." She couldn't take advantage of him, so she could only take advantage of him with her mouth. She couldn't beat him, and she couldn't even scold him. Her whole body was boiling, and she was about to explode. In that case, this matter ends here. At the same time, in another direction of Hueco Mundo, Sosuke Aizen gathered a large number of troops. Looking around, the entire Hueco Mundo was densely packed. Hundreds of large black caverns were opened, and countless grand voids came out from them. "Aizen-sama, isn't it too early to attack the modern world?" Inside Virtual Night Temple, Ise-sensei looked at Aizen Sosuke, who had closed his eyes and was silent. He was quite worried. Although Hueco Mundo had a slight advantage, it was gone after Dustless became the head captain. And now, they were facing a great crisis. "I just ordered them to destroy the modern world to create a favorable environment for Wang Jian. We're not at war with Soul Society, so there's no need to worry." Sosuke Aizen looked at Higashihara, then closed his eyes again. At this moment, he had completely integrated the Hogyoku into his body. Feeling the boundless power, Sosuke Aizen was so excited that his lips trembled. His eyes were shining as if he could see the future when he stepped on Dustless's corpse and ascended to the throne. Sosuke Aizen wasn't worried about this operation. He only sent a large number of Jillians to invade the modern world to prepare for Wang Jian. It didn't matter even if the entire army died. After all, they were just pawns. It didn't matter if they died. Chapter 1169. Sosuke Aizen launched a large-scale attack. It was impossible to ignore him. Gathering countless Jillians to attack the main world had already surpassed the level of petty theft. This was a serious provocation, so Soul Society naturally had to respond. "What if their captains stop us?" Ise-sensei asked worriedly. No matter how powerful the Jillians were, they weren't captains. "Don't worry. Those Jillians are just sacrificial pawns. It's fine if they can complete the mission, but if they can't, then so be it. Plus, those captains will be in big trouble, especially head captain Dustless." Sosuke Aizen laughed coldly. His hoarse voice was like the hiss of a poisonous snake, making people shudder. First Division's captain's meeting. Wu Chen opened his eyes calmly and looked at the team leaders who were standing in 2 rows. He nodded with satisfaction. He was the only one sitting in the entire First Division. These former colleagues could only stand. He felt particularly comfortable. Due to the addition of several new captains, the entire Godei 13 had a new look. Sosuke Aizen sent a large number of Jillians to invade the modern world. He definitely doesn't have good intentions. Shunsuke Aizen said seriously. No one in Hueco Mundo had this ability other than Sosuke Aizen, who could mobilize thousands of Jillians. "We must send someone to stop him." Yukite Jushira followed. "Yes." The captains responded to Shunsuke Aizen's call and nodded. Shinozaki Ichigo can't hold on in the modern world. It's difficult for him to fight thousands of Jillians alone. The newly appointed Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant said. She then suggested to Dustless, "Head Captain, we should immediately send someone to support him." Hearing this, Dustless raised his eyebrows. He was still counting on Sosuke Aizen to create Wang Jian. When the time comes, he can use this opportunity to invade Soul King Palace and devour the Soul King. Now that Sosuke Aizen finally made his move, Dustless naturally couldn't stop him. "Of course, we must protect the dignity of Soul Society." Dustless slapped the table and looked at Toshiro Hyphen. "Captain Hyphen and Captain Nakamura will work together with Shinozaki Ichigo to wipe out the Jillians. Captain K, Captain Zaraki, and Captain Nya will hide in Hueco Mundo and cut off the connection between Hueco Mundo and the modern world. Yes, head captain. The efficiency of Soul Society was extremely fast. As soon as the captain meeting ended, a steady stream of captains and Shinigami poured into Hueco Mundo. Nishiya, Higashishiro, and Katsumura Zuasian were on their way to Kazucho. Without the captains and Grim Reaper, Soul Society became much quieter. Dustless was also helpless. He couldn't just ignore Sosuke Aizen, so he made a small fuss. In fact, he wanted Sosuke Aizen to create Wang Jian as soon as possible. I hope you two are killed. Be killed. Looking at the disappearing silhouettes of Rifen Valley's Toshiro and Zuozhan, Wuchen pleaded. Usually, these two were the most talkative and dissatisfied with his opinions. Now that they were dead, it was best. At this moment, in the first team's house, Captain Tianbei, looking at the person in front of him, it was the captain of the 3rd Division, Tianbei, embroidered assistant. This man had bronze-black skin and looked very strong. He had a gentle and modest smile on his face. But Wu Chan caught the hostility that sometimes floated and sometimes dormant in his eyes. Although his face was very gentle, it was just an appearance. Inside, he was a decisive person. Head captain, Tianbei, embroidered assistant, said respectfully. What's the matter? Wu Chan sat down and asked faintly. This Tianbei embroidered assistant made an embarrassed expression and immediately approached Dustless and said, I want to join. Suddenly, he paused. Then he roared with killing intent. Sir Head Captain, in fact, what I want to say is please die. Then, Tianbei embroidered assistant's expression was very fierce, and a cold light shot out from his waist. Because he was too close, he didn't even have time to react and directly pierced Dustless's head. Poochie! In an instant, his head fell to the ground. The head that fell to the ground was still in a daze, as if it hadn't realized what had happened. TSK, you are indeed a useless vase. You are the head captain at such a young age. There is no one else in Soul Society. Tianbei embroidered assistant saw that Dustless was instantly killed and said in an extremely bored tone, It's really boring. I thought I could have some fun, but who knew that this head captain is so weak? Tianbei embroidered assistant sighed and said with great disappointment. Then he turned and left. I said, a low murmur spread out and said, I said that Aizen Sosuke hates the Grim Reaper very much. How could he let you come back? If I'm not wrong, you should have joined forces with him, right? No, I shouldn't say that you joined forces because that kind of ambitious person is extremely conceited. He will only treat everyone as a chess piece. You are not worthy of being his partner. Tianbei embroidered assistant trembled all over and instantly turned his head. A chopped-off head can talk. Looking at Dustless, who fell to the ground and opened his mouth to speak, Tianbei embroidered assistant felt that his brain wasn't enough. She fell into a rare dead-end situation. Looking at you, it seems that you don't even know my ability. It seems that you are indeed Aizen Sosuke's chess piece. Aizen Sosuke clearly knows that I have the ability to be immune to physical attacks. He just sent you to die, idiot. Chapter 1170. The heavenly shell embroidered assistant's face darkened. She looked like she was about to bleed. She stared at the head on the ground, and her eyes were bloodshot. You, how on earth did you do it? The heavenly shell embroidered assistant asked in shock as she rolled her eyes. At this moment, Dustless's head had been separated from his body, but his head was still talking. Moreover, the most ridiculous thing was that Dustless's body, which had been beheaded, seemed to be fine. He was still standing on the spot, safe and sound. This is very simple. You just have to look at me from a different angle. Look at me as if you were looking at the death god. Sooner or later, you will be so shocked that you will go crazy. The head gradually weathered and turned into thousands of photons, which reconnected Dustless's body. When she saw such an unbelievable scene, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant's mouth widened. Her jaw was almost dislocated. Don't look at you as if you were the death god. When she heard this, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant sneered. She was shocked by Dustless's arrogance. She sneered and mocked. Are you saying that I should look at you as if you were a god and treat you as a god through and through? The heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's face was full of disdain. Even if he wanted a joke, there should be a limit. Isn't that so? What's wrong with that? Don't you think that this way, everything becomes reasonable? Dustless was not angry. He asked calmly, because you look at me as if I am an ordinary person, you will die a horrible death. A horrible death. Dustless was afraid that the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant would not understand what he meant. Don't be arrogant. The heavenly shell-embroidered assistant swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. She stared at Dustless's cold face and realized that she was speechless. What Dustless said was the truth. There was no need to say anything. If she looked at him as if he was a god, everything would be reasonable. Because he was a god, he could not be killed. Even if his head was cut off, he could reattach it. Because he was a god, he had unlimited power. He had the power to collapse the sky and the earth with a flick of his finger. Because he was a god, he had unlimited spiritual pressure. Because he was a god, he could... She quietly stared at Dustless, who was approaching her. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth. So Suke Eisen, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. The heavenly shell embroiderer gnashed his teeth and roared. He wanted nothing more than to tear Eisen Sosuke to shreds. It was because he had listened to Eisen Sosuke's slanderous words that he had fallen to such a state. He had been completely oblivious to the fact that he had set a trap for himself. Even though he had buried himself, the heavenly shell embroidery assistant still had not discovered it. No, I can't give up. There's still a chance of winning. Stealing his heart, the heavenly shell-embroidered helper chose to resist with all his might. He still had his own dreams. How could he die so hastily in a place like this? His eyes focused, and an enormous amount of spiritual pressure and lightning gathered in his right hand. Tao Breaker, 88, Flying Dragon strikes the thief. Sky blue beams of light shot out, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. The void within 1,000 feet was dimmed, and the buildings of the First Division were forcibly demolished, turning into rubble. The light of a firefly, he calmly sized up the incoming light. It was several dozen feet wide, and the destructive fluctuations caused him to involuntarily retreat. His heart was filled with despair and haze. In front of this unstoppable light, it was as if everything was made of paper. The slightest touch would cause it to turn into ashes. The 88 Tao Breaker that I used with all my strength is extremely powerful. It's enough to instantly injure a division leader. Even if you take it, I think, boom, boom, boom. A huge boom resounded through the sky. The white clouds in the sky were blown away and evaporated. The power was indeed strong. However, the strange thing was that the 88 Tao Breaker, which should have exploded on the ground, suddenly flew up into the sky. Bastard, how is this possible? What kind of joke is this? He sent my Tao Breaker flying with his bare hands. The heavenly shell-embroidered helper suppressed his saliva and exclaimed in shock. His tone was several times louder. Dustless had actually sent his Tao Breaker flying with an exaggerated wave of his hand. How could he not be shocked? To be honest, I've never taken your level seriously. Even if it's Eisen Sosuke, I've always treated him as a nobody, Dustless said casually and calmly. Different realms meant different things. Perhaps the heavenly shell-embroidered helper was shocked and in disbelief, but Dustless was not happy at all. On the contrary, he was rather disappointed. With this move, he saw through the heavenly shell-embroidered helper's strength. He was also an opponent who was not strong enough but liked to be arrogant. In an instant, he lost his only interest. What exactly are you shocked about? Seeing the shock on the heavenly shell-embroidered helper's face, Dustless said calmly, "The boring game ends here. Compared to this kind of boring battle, I prefer to go to the 4th Division and have a pleasant after-dinner activity with Ray." The vast spiritual pressure that had been hibernating surged, and the violent airwaves caused the earth to tremble. Suddenly, the heavenly shell-embroidered helper felt that the surroundings were abnormally hot. He muttered to himself absent-mindedly, "Such a big formation. Could it be the legendary 96 Dao Breaker, cremation with one sword? 96 Dao Breaker? Are you talking about cremation with one sword? No. It's not worth using that to deal with you. A small character, like you, can be dealt with in an instant with a 90 Dao Breaker. Dustless pointed at the heavenly shell embroidered helper as he spoke with unusual seriousness. Countless cold black lights appeared slowly and swarmed toward the heavenly shell embroidered helper from all directions. Dao Breaker 90, Black Coffin. As soon as he finished speaking, it was as if he was playing the soul-calming song of the apocalypse. The world before the heavenly shell embroidered helper's eyes turned black. He vaguely saw the evil spirits of the underworld waving at him. Then he suddenly felt an incomparable stabbing pain. Puffed, puffed, puffed. Countless black lights pierced through the heavenly shell embroidered helper's body, shattering it completely. His flesh and blood flew everywhere as he was brutally dismembered. Even without singing, the power was beyond imagination. It was several times stronger than Aizen Sosuke's full singing. Chapter 1171. His overwhelming strength could be said to be invincible. Even the heavenly shell embroidered assistant and his pride were crushed together. His body was covered with hideous bloody wounds, and his crushed bones were exposed to the air. White liquid seeped out from the crushed bones, and the air was filled with a thick smell of blood. This pungent smell made one feel uncomfortable just by smelling it. He seems to be completely dead. Glancing at the corpse of the heavenly shell embroidered assistant, Dustless turned around and left. His footsteps were very light. After being crushed and obliterated by number 90 Dao Breaker, it was very difficult to survive. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, a sharp whistling sound came from behind, and Dustless, who realized the danger, turned sideways. Poochie. Even though his speed was very fast, one of Dustless's arms was mercilessly cut off by the blade wind. You're not dead. Staring at the unscathed heavenly shell embroidered assistant, Dustless wondered in his heart. This guy was clearly torn apart by the black coffin, but now he has come back to life. The spiritual pressure in his body seems to have increased several times. After looking at the heavenly shell embroidered assistant for a long time, Dustless came to a shocking conclusion. His spiritual pressure had been absorbed. Bastard, I was too careless. I forgot that this guy seems to be able to absorb the enemy's spiritual pressure and transform it for his own use. I'm afraid that the spiritual pressure I just released from the black coffin was all absorbed by this guy, so his spiritual pressure has become stronger. The Yao Yao blade can absorb the enemy's spiritual pressure. Feeling the surging spiritual pressure in his body, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant was very confident. He didn't expect Dustless's spiritual pressure to be so terrifying. Just a casual Dao Breaker consumed spiritual pressure comparable to that of a captain-level Shinigami. This was also one of the reasons why Dustless's Kido was so powerful. Under the endless infusion of spiritual pressure, any move would undergo a tremendous change. The power of the number 90 Dao Breaker Black Coffin was the same. Now our identities seem to have changed. I have changed from the prey to the hunter. With a smile on his face, he immediately slashed at Dustless with his Zanpakuto. Especially after seeing the arm that fell on the ground, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant's confidence sword. If a person lost an arm, his combat power would inevitably be greatly reduced. Idiot, you came at the right time. Do you think you can win like this? You're still going to die, idiot. Dustless's mouth was full of mockery. He did not care about something like an arm. He could grow another one at any time, and it would not affect him at all. Thinking that victory was within his grasp was just the wishful thinking of the heavenly shell embroidery. The severed arm emitted a faint luster, overflowing with a milky white, mysterious liquid. It looked quite mysterious. It was just a short gap of a breath, and a brand new arm grew out. This unimaginable speed caused the heavenly shell embroidered assistant to jump in fright, but she still decisively gritted her teeth and charged explosively towards Dustless. Since he couldn't escape the fate of death even if he tried to escape, then he would rather die in battle. Swish! Swish! The long saber swept over, aiming for the vitals. It was specially chosen to sweep at tricky spots. When the attack was vicious, an ordinary person's head would probably be directly chopped off. The swordsmanship was unprecedentedly tricky, and there was no way to dodge it. Bring it on. Seeing that there was no chance for him to escape, Dustless simply gave up on the idea of temporarily taking shelter. He said in an extremely provocative manner, "You're just a lackey. Dog Rock is your true home. I was blind to have made you the captain. How hateful. You're courting death." Hearing this, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant trembled with anger. Her rough and weather-beaten old face turned green. After Dustless's interference, the perfect swordsmanship was instantly full of flaws. Her entire body was full of holes. Once a person's mind was in a mess, they would definitely be distracted. At the same time, it also meant that this person was about to walk into the abyss of the netherworld. After all, not everyone was carved from the same mold as Dustless, who had countless life-saving methods and the ability to regenerate without limit. The small foot that carried a flash of absolute heavy blow rose from the ground. Due to the terrifying temperature of the light, it directly melted the heavenly shell embroidered assistant's skin. It hurts. Bastard. The miserable cries and howls made one tremble with fear. Those heart-wrenching screams made it seem as if she regretted living in this world and wished she was dead. Light speed kick. The merciless light revealed itself on the heavenly shell embroidered assistant's chest and blasted him back mercilessly. After an explosion, he disappeared in the blink of an eye. Boom, boom, boom. The huge tremors attracted the attention of the Soul Society's captains. They looked at the blazing fireballs in the void in disbelief and rushed over without stopping to rest. It was one thing for the head captain to fly into a rage, but he could not drag his own people into this. That kind of indiscriminate attack would either kill or injure those who came into contact with it. Everyone understood the heavenly shell embroidered assistant's pain. Sometimes, living was definitely more painful than dying. If I can kill an idiot like you once, I can kill you twice, 3 times for times. I can even kill you 1,000 times. Dustless spoke softly. His casual tone was filled with indifference and confidence. He had never taken an insignificant person like the heavenly shell embroidered assistant seriously. A grain of sand would always be sand. It was impossible for it to evolve just because of a momentary dazzle. This was unrealistic and impossible. Colorful divine rainbows bloomed in unison in the void. They all had the same destination, which was where Wu Chun was. After all, he was now the leader of Soul Society and the personally appointed head captain of Team Zero. He had the absolute right to speak. Chapter 1172. At the same time, there was a huge change in another direction. The entire city was turned into ruins. Damn it, why are there so many of them? We don't have enough manpower. The humans in the modern realm are about to be wiped out by the Great Voids. We need to ask for reinforcements from Soul Society. Otherwise, the entire human race will be wiped out by the hateful Jillian sooner or later. Kongzucho, Kuro Saki Ichigo, Higashiya Toshiro, and Sakumura Seizen were standing close to each other. They were surrounded by countless Great Voids. Jillian was rushing towards them in the dark. The Shinigami brought by Sa-Jun and Higashi were almost completely wiped out. They all screamed unwillingly and finally fell powerlessly in the burning ruins of the city. In the war, the first to be unlucky were the ordinary people at the bottom. I've already sent a message to Soul Society before. Most of the Killian have appeared. Why are only the 2 of you here? The number of Shinigami you brought is also very average. We are now being besieged. Kurosaki Ichigo shouted loudly. His tone was hysterical. This is the arrangement of the head captain. Higashiya Toshiro's green eyes flashed with a touch of gloominess, and immediately comforted Kurosaki, Ichigo, and Sajin. Soul Society's reinforcements may be close at hand, we just need to hold on for a while. These words were naturally to fool Kurosaki, Ichigo, and Sajin. Dustless deliberately did this to create a favorable time for Aizen to create Wang Jian. Then he can go to Soul King Palace to devour the Soul King. We can only hold on for now. Kurosaki Ichigo could only sigh in frustration. Now that things have reached this point, they could only wait for the reinforcements. Although he knew he might be fooled, Kurosaki Ichigo chose to wait. The hope was slim, but was better than nothing. At least it gave him the motivation to hold on. Kakaka, it was also at this moment that a huge hole suddenly appeared in the void, and a group of great voids that were clearly different from Jillian walked out. They were all wearing white uniforms, and it was clear that they all came from the same force. That is, Higashi Shiro and Sakumura Sakura raised their heads and looked over. After recognizing who it was, their expressions changed drastically. They were shocked to find that these people were all Ajuches. In the past, they could still fight against the Ajuches. However, they had all been tricked by Dustless. Whether or not they could survive was a problem. It was also at this moment that a burst of light suddenly appeared in the depths of the sky. The reinforcements they had been waiting for had finally arrived. However, the person who walked out of the realm gate caused them to be directly petrified. This person wore heavy makeup and a dazzling golden hair ornament on her forehead. Her exquisite and translucent face was absolutely beautiful, as if she was deliberately carved by the heavens. That bastard has only been the head captain for a few days, and he's already made such a big mess. Looking at the pitiful Kongzucho below, the graceful beauty complained in dissatisfaction. She waved her hand lightly, and the great Void Realm experts that were surrounding Shinozaki Ichigo and the others collapsed one after another. They turned into a group of dregs and disappeared with the wind. The woman with the hair ornament on her head and an enchanting yet cold appearance was not ordinary. She was one of the members of the Zero Squad, Shout Oro Senjumaru. The Zero Squad existed in the Spirit King Palace. Originally, this kind of instigation was left to the Godiai 13. However, the commotion this time was too big, so the Zero Squad had no choice but to step in. Where's Dustless? Landing gracefully on the ground, Shout Oro Senjumaru looked at the three of them and asked suspiciously, "Did that guy send you guys here?" Higashi Shiro and Sakumura Sakura looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Due to the appearance of the Zero Squad in Quiet Soul Society last time, the two of them also knew about the existence of this special organization. The Shinigami that we brought were all annihilated. The number of Jillian is as many as snow. Captain Sakumura and I are the captains. As for Shinozaki Ichigo, sigh. Higashi Shiro was young and tender, but his tone was very mature and experienced. Hearing this, Shoutoro Senjumaru's eyes lit up. He grasped the important part and asked, "In other words, that guy Dustless ordered the two of you to come and reinforce the modern world?" "Yes." Sajin and Higashiya Toshiro answered honestly, telling the truth of the matter to Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru, without missing a single detail. "Ah!" The greater voids who heard the news roared. Although these Jillian had no will and intelligence, their strength was still not bad. Only the vice-captain level Shinigami could be relied on to fight against them. Mere ants. How dare you be so arrogant?" Shoutoro Senjumaru turned his head and said coldly. His whole body was filled with cold, murderous intent. Looking at the tragic situation in the modern world, his murderous intent increased. With a wave of his hand, countless needles that looked like sewing appeared. Pay with your lives for the Shinigami that died in battle and the humans in the modern world. As he spoke, the Jillian that came attacking were easily crushed by Shoutoro Senjumaru. It was as easy as blowing dust. It was not worth mentioning. In fact, it was indeed so. In the eyes of the Zero Squad, even the vice-captain level Shinigami were not enough, let alone these insignificant Jillian. They were just there to fill the gaps between their teeth. Chapter 1173. Inside the Soul Society, the sky was clear and cloudless. Damn it, why is it like this? How can such a young captain be so strong? Damn it, the intelligence said that he has only been a Shinigami for a few decades. The heavenly shell embroidered assistant's Zanpakuto was inserted into the ground. She endured the stinging pain all over her body and supported her body. She stared at Dustless, who was coming towards her with difficulty. With every step he took, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant's heart was one step closer to the abyss. He smelled a special will from Dustless. This guy was just using me to pass time. He never cared about me at all. The heavenly shell embroidered assistant's face turned green. In the end, she came to this shocking conclusion. Even though the strength that Dustless had displayed now definitely surpassed that of the dimension where the death god was, there was an inexplicable voice in her heart that told the heavenly shell embroidered assistant that this was definitely not his full strength. When he mentioned Dustless, Sosuke Aizen showed a complicated expression. It was complicated with unwillingness, mixed with fear, hatred, and admiration. Obviously, Sosuke Aizen knew that he was not as good as Dustless, not just in terms of strength, but in all aspects. What should I do? Seeing Dustless's figure gradually approaching, the heavenly shell embroiderer's imagination ran wild. He thought about countermeasures. It seemed that a strong resistance would only be ruthlessly crushed and eliminated. Dustless would mercilessly sweep him into the trash heap of history. Are you going to give up? Dustless, who was good at observing people, laughed. There was a trace of pity in his words. I haven't played enough yet, and you're going to die. Facing an absolute existence like you, anyone would give up. Futile resistance is futile. It's better to give up and lose with dignity. The heavenly shell embroiderer admitted frankly. He knew that the other party had the strength to destroy the world, and he knew that he was no match for him, but he still insisted on challenging him. In the heavenly shell embroiderer's eyes, he was an idiot. How about cooperating once? Looking at Dustless, the heavenly shell embroiderer restrained his killing intent and suggested very kindly. He couldn't beat him, and he couldn't run away. In this case, he could only lower himself and beg for mercy. Cooperation? Do you have the capital to cooperate with me? Dustless neither agreed nor refused. Instead, he directly said, putting aside the factor of strength, do you think you have any information that would interest me? Hearing this, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant froze, and large beads of sweat dripped from her forehead. I have. Opening his mouth, he was shocked to find that he didn't have a bargaining chip that could move Dustless. Not to mention bait, he didn't even have the qualifications to move Dustless. He had no right to negotiate at all. Sir Head Captain, the people from Soul Society, who had rushed over, glared at the heavenly shell embroidered assistant with indignation. They could not help but curse. You despicable villain! The head captain is indebted to you. He gave you a heavy responsibility and handed the 3rd Division to you. Is this how you repay his kindness? How shameless! Shiomu Rukia's delicate little face surged with anger. She unsheathed her Zanpakuto, and in anger, she slashed straight at the heavenly shell embroidered assistant. Seeing this, Dustless frowned and ordered, Lucia, stop for me. You're not his match. Seeing this, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant's eyes glowed with green light, and a touch of coldness and cunning flashed in her eyes. This was an opportunity. Clang, clang, clang. Waving her Zanpakuto catch Rukia's series of awe-inspiring attacks. Her left arm emitted a small scale of Ryatsu, and at the same time, she waved her Zanpakuto to force Rukia back. Binding path number 61, 6-rod light prison. 6 huge light belts swept over and easily bound Rukia. Seeing this, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant hurriedly stepped forward and blocked Rukia's throat with her Zanpakuto. Idiot, you are too arrogant. With your strength, you are still far from being able to resist a captain-level Grim Reaper. Smacking her lips, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant's face was full of disdain and contempt. She shouted loudly, "Get out of my way, or I will immediately kill this Grim Reaper," called Rukia, Let her go before I get angry. Dustless's tone had obviously changed. It was a little hoarse, a little indifferent, and even more violent and boiling with killing intent. Let her go. Hearing this, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant glanced at Rukia and shook her head decisively, saying, "She is now the guarantee of my life. If I let her go, I will definitely die. You think you won't die if you don't let her go? Let her go if you know what's good for you, and I can leave your corpse intact. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences." Dustless said coldly, his eyes already glowing red. "Is that so?" Hearing this, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant remained unmoved. Her indifferent tone left no room for negotiation. "Get out of my way, or I will immediately kill this little girl. Don't test my bottom line. A person who is forced into a desperate situation can do anything." The heavenly shell-embroidered assistant gritted her teeth and warned. Her Zanpakuto was already close to Rukia, and there were obvious bloodstains on Rukia's neck. Heavenly hand power. The discussion was fruitless. Dustless directly activated the ability of Rinnegan, and his body suddenly disappeared. Such an exaggerated scene made everyone's eyes widen. Where did he go? Seeing Dustless suddenly and strangely disappear, the nervous heavenly shell-embroidered assistant muttered to herself in amazement. At the same time, she looked left and right, looking for traces of Dustless. His other hand quietly grasped Shio Rukia's beautiful hair. After all, this was his current life-saving trump card. "Behind you, idiot!" As his voice fell, the wind from the blade passed through the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's body and directly cut her in half. Even because of the excessive blood and speed, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's heart was still beating. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.